Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Aurora. This class is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, and today is an important class, Level 1, Lesson 9, The Flying Rainbow Lasagna and DNA. So I already have been talking about this somewhat for this semester, but I'm going to super emphasize it because I realize, I talk about a variety of things. I always try to keep the curriculum fresh and relevant for each time that I'm doing these presentations. And so, of course, sometimes I have to talk about all the things that make my face go down, all the things that are on my naughty piece of paper. But I would like to focus on really the tools for improvement, the pathway to freedom, the Flying Rainbow Lasagna as the epicenter of everything we talk about in this course, because it is literally a very effective maneuver or empowerment tool that you can use to respond to all of these naughty things that are in the environment that are, of course, we are recognizing them in our discussion, but not willing to re-emit them with our manifestation capabilities. Pardon me for a moment. I'm just going to see. Can you hear me acceptably? Someone just asked if there is sound, so I just want to make sure that you can hear me effectively. Just reply in the chat to make sure you can hear me. If not, then it would be very silly for me to give the whole class without people being able to actually hear me. Okay? Good. Thank you very much for the little informal audio check. Okay. So in order to talk about today's presentation, how the Flying Rainbow Lasagna shape relates to the behavior of your DNA, we have to do a complete recalibration of everything that maybe you've been taught or presented about DNA from the scientific, objective materialist scientific medical establishment, and also doctors, nurses, medical care, medical science and medical care as this relates to you. And especially, I wrote a new little word down here on my piece of paper. I don't really want to emphasize or energize this word in your life, but I need to talk about this a lot. And I know that there are real issues on the captured platform where I will be eventually uploading this video in being able to talk about that, because there's a whole pharmaceutical industry that is related to that particular ailment in our world. And so there's a lot of things that I'm not allowed to call into question officially. So, of course, I am not a medical doctor. I'm not giving medical advice in any way. I'm proudly not a person with any level of medical training. I am strictly an intuitive, and all the things that I will be sharing with you today are completely fictional. All right? Completely fictional, and we'll be like laughing merrily the whole entire time. All right? But fictional. But some of the first things that I have to be extremely critical of in the worldview that objective materialist science and medicine have given to you are the definition of what DNA is and its behavior, and also how that relates to public health concerns, both the disease that I just referenced, and we'll just call that crabs, and also the other diseases that have been more prevalent in the world in the past 5 years, or let's even say the proposed existence of a supposed disease that has been intuited to be present throughout the past 5 years, but that has not actually been proven to be present over the past 5 years, because as I move forward in my tirade today, the current medical and scientific establishment is completely unprepared to accurately interact with or perceive DNA in any way. And up until this point, I went back into some of my older presentations and my original notes. So as I look at my stuff from previous semesters, I'm like, oh, like, isn't that so cute? Like, I was so giving. I was so accommodative of the scienticians, the doctors and scientists of this particular time. I'm going to mute you because you get a weird echo. I was very, very giving of them because I come from a higher dimension. I'm like, oh yeah, like these poor piteous scientists, like they don't know their butt from a hole in the ground. I better be nice to them. But I don't feel so charitable towards them anymore, because from their severe ignorance, they have created a lot of substances and public health policies around substances that have to do with DNA, genetics, and your personal body sovereignty that I do not agree with at all. And I'm sure that you can parse the language there in order to sense, exactly what I'm talking about. So let's talk about the complete misguided qualities of how science is misperceiving DNA. First, I spoke about this in this semester already, but DNA has a behavior. So when I move my hands like this, I am not just playing an imaginary harp or something like that. What I'm really doing is trying to show you the undulative movements that your DNA are always doing on a subcellular level. So your DNA is dynamic. It is not static. It is like a crystal. Oh, I was going to hold up a little crystal, but let me hold up like my giant torpedo crystal. Okay. So much like this crystal, you can see that this is a solid object with materiality. But you can also comprehend that this crystal is vibrating on a very, very fast level, as it is like an antenna for certain consciousness broadcasts, thought forms, or reality structures. Your DNA is the same thing. Your DNA is a crystalline light form within your physical body, and it is a miracle. Please don't ever be a reductionist in looking at it as if it is a mere mechanism. My great criticism of the medical establishment and the scientific worldview is that it looks at DNA as if it is a mere mechanism, and it is so much more than that. DNA is alive. It has a sentience. It is an aliveness and a sentience that is non-local, meaning that it spreads all across the fabric of time and space. So I always call that the fabric of time, space, and consciousness, STC. And consciousness aspect is interwoven in the molecular structure of what is DNA. So now you can start to comprehend fictionally. If you just took a bunch of DNA and snipped it up into a bunch of weird pieces and then Frankensteined those pieces together or amalgamated those pieces together into strange, grotesque creatures, you would not necessarily be doing something that is life-affirming in an individual organism. And you also might very well be insulting and assaulting the entirety of DNA as it is connected fictionally in this fictional story that we're talking about to the entire fabric of space, time, and consciousness. There's not a way for one little stupid, mean, or idiotic scientist to make his laboratory mixtures in his petri dishes and not have that have an impact on the genetic quotient in living beings fictionally, such as you and me fictionally, or squirrels in the park, fictional squirrels in the fictional park, or fictional plankton in a fictional ocean. Or how about fictional people who fictionally lived 10,000 years ago? Or fictional people who will fictionally live in 10 million years? All of those people are fictionally connected through fictional DNA. If I'm driving you crazy, good. And the responsibility towards the fabric of consciousness is something that must be assessed when anybody undergoes anything to change or transform DNA or to utilize DNA or to have an impact on DNA. You must take into consideration the impact that your actions will have on the whole, because you are a part of the whole. So I'm very, very critical of the scientific, objective, materialistic view of DNA and also motivations and agenda to exploit DNA. Because it is as disrespectful to exploit DNA as like if you arrived at any magical foreign land or beautiful unspoiled forest and you're like, wow, what a bunch of cool stuff around here. How can I exploit it? Like, how can I chop down these trees and turn them into inexpensive furniture and sell them to another country? Like, none of that is respectful of the 1,000-year-old grove of ancient, trees that you're coming upon and the information and the wisdom that it contains in its beautiful, pristine, unspoiled nature. Okay. So, yes, you are in a body that has already been genetically modified many times. That's definitely a sad story because it was never positive. Each of these genetic modifications, of course, in the fictional reality that I'm portraying to you, but no, traditional science is not that threatened by my assertions of the fact that the bodies that you're presently in are the end result of many targeted mutations in these species throughout your ancestry and which are not really recorded by human history. So this is already considered alternative interpretations of history, and I'm fine with that. Like, I'm very alternative in my interpretation of what humans look at as geological ages, that the rationalist story that you tell yourself about how long ago things happened or how long human civilization has been going for, or what is the format of human civilization and human history. All of these really must be reassessed and wildly recalibrated, as they are not accurate at all. So the rationalist story about human history is not effective. You can probably sense that in yourself. Like, a lot of people that I know who are very, very good people are very intent on reawakening their potential inside of them that has been genetically modified out of them to consume pure light again. And to do that as a 100% source of vitality and sustenance for the cellular physicality presence and the material presence of your body. And this is totally normal and natural to me. I'm like, of course, girl, like, go get it, eat some light. That's what you are here for. So to many people, they don't even know that that's what they're doing. But as they're exploring vegetarianism and veganism, because they have an inner, unspoken, unformed desire to become less dense and more ephemeral in their dietary habits, that feeling like that will, being a plant eater will bring them more towards being a plant in their behavior, in their genetic behavior, and to the possibilities of what they can express in the world. So I'm trying to say it's an un and subconscious desire to do the things that you can do when you are a photosynthesis being, which is what you actually are. But you as a group human species have been genetically modified many times to no longer be photosynthesizing. And I am very much a photosynthesizing being. And as soon as I came into this body of this format, like, of course, I expected things to be the same as my genetic format when I was in ancient concurrent Atlantis. And of course, I wasn't. And so I was very confused for the first 8 or 10 days, first few weeks of being here, as I did not eat physical food. I just ate pure sunlight, and I didn't comprehend the feelings that I had in my body. I was like, I'm eating plenty of sunlight. Like, why do I have the empty ow feeling inside? And then I had to learn, like, oh, food goes in here now that the body is shaped like this. So this has been like definitely an educational process for me, and it's been necessary so that I can be a good mentor. I have to put this crystal down gently so that it doesn't, like, it's very, very heavy, and it has destroyed bathtubs in the past when it torpedoed a bathtub. But staying on track here. How to return to being a light eater. So one of the things that I did was came here into this body that was shaped or conformed to very similar to the genetic behavior of what you guys are presently inhabiting in your physical forms. And I'm like, oh, these things are all out of place. These puzzle pieces are all out of place. How about I flying rainbow lasagna, which is my term for do a new higher dimensional dance movement that restructures and restores my DNA in this body to, or close to, the format or pattern that it was intended to portray or to inhabit or to behave as. And that's what I started to do. And I also found that I could modify myself part of the way towards being a light eater, but not all the way. And that some of this was environmental. Even in 2001, when I first came in here, or 2003, to recognize, like, we didn't have as bad of a sun simulator, we didn't have as bad chemtrails, and we certainly didn't have as bad some of the other more recent naughty things that have come into our world. But I still was not able to be 100% of a light eater. I had to learn about groceries. Like, definitely this was, like, charmingly, come to my retreat. I'll tell you all about it. I should have started off the class today by inviting everyone to the retreat. Okay, so I should have done administrative stuff. Brief break for a moment. And now I remind everyone, upcoming Flying Rainbow Lasagna retreat in Sedona, New Year's Eve. And a part of what I love is getting together and telling people all of my Aurora stories, all of my walking in stories, all of my fish out of water stories, some of which are, like, hilariously embarrassing about me, that things that I didn't know that now I definitely do know, but they seemed obvious now, but I didn't know them then. and other wonderful times when I was misinterpreted or didn't know what I was doing. So come to my retreat, and I'm uncensored, and I'll tell you about all those things, but also come to my retreat for many other wonderful reasons, because so what I'm teaching you about today is a very personal and unique thing: how to flying rainbow lasagna with your DNA. The answer for each person is unique to you. It is not a one-size-fits-all solution. Each one of you has a unique trajectory of your consciousness, a unique trajectory through time. Your DNA needs to do a particular dance. That will be the dance of your freedom. So the type of inspirer or guide or mentor that I am is to inspire you to do your unique dance. And I have a Tuesday morning dance club. People have been contacting me beautifully through my newly designed website to ask for being a part of it. Thank you for doing that, and I will respond and add to the group email list very soon. And we're about to start a new chapter. That's going to be because we're finishing up on September 21st the present movement, which is movement number 13, and then we will get into the next Flying Rainbow Lasagna movement, like the next chapter as the next season begins. So it's all very, very exciting on that. But I want to encourage each person to develop and find and create your own unique dance. So some of the things that I teach or demonstrate are universal, and some of them are unique to you, to each person. So for example, like when I'm flying rainbow lasagnaing, I am matching the patterns of my own DNA and of my own physical body and what I'm doing in time in each moment with an ocean of consciousness. If you can imagine, like the paintings that are on my dress, but it doesn't stop at the edges of the fabric. It just keeps going out into the whole everything, and I'm totally swimming and flying in the most wonderful way through that ocean of harmonic patterns and beauty. That's what I'm really doing. And so what, as an art teacher, guide, inspirer, mentor, what I encourage people to do is to perceive those patterns. So we learn about them here in class, and to help awaken your light body. That's when you get your higher faculties active and fully capacitated, so you can see where you're going down the road of time, or see through the windshield, and to inspire and support people in exploring their own personal artistry, because you must come up with your own innovative time solutions. That's what this dance is. So the things that worked for me, like I did a lot of body healing, a lot of DIY, fixer-upper stuff. Like when I came into this house, the house of my body had a lot of damage and things that weren't going right in my body. And so I had to figure out how to fix it, how to optimize it. Some of it was responding to neurological injuries, but some of it was responding to the ancient genetic modifications that you guys are all the end result of. So as I came up with and continue to come up with and innovate the Flying Rainbow Lasagna response to, or solutions for this body that looks like this, I am able to be an example to you, but then you have to take those examples or that template and modify it for your own life, for your own body, and for your own proclivities. So I also want to talk to you about how humans objectify the body, and how humans objectify DNA, and how wrong it is. Because humans have learned something about DNA, like you're learning, it's a language, and humans are not literate in this language at all. Humans are still in the level of, like, there was a time when Western culture and European culture had not yet comprehended and deciphered ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. And they looked at these strange pictures and they were like, well, it's saying something, but we don't know exactly what. I think it's saying this. Well, I think it's saying that. And many of the things that they thought it was saying were wildly incorrect, because they were ethnocentric. The people of the time, Northern Europeans of the late 1700s or early 1800s, were looking at and reading ancient Egyptian culture through their own cultural presuppositions, with their own lens. And they did not correctly translate many things, because many of the things were structured wildly differently in ancient Egypt and even pre-Pharaonic Egypt, the origin of that symbolic language itself. So DNA is a language. And it is very much a language that is connected to time and to light, which is pure information and pure intelligence and pure consciousness. And just like language, it has building blocks that are letters or the equivalent analog of letters and the equivalent analog of letters that come together to form words or phrases. But DNA also has syntax. And that is why when people from a foreign country speak a language that is not their birth language, they often sound like a foreign speaker because their syntax is incorrect. They are not putting the words in the proper order to sound like a native speaker and to represent that they are literate. So with comprehending DNA, human scientists right now are not literate. They do not sound like native speakers of the DNA language at all, which is the language of harmonics. You guys are going to be great native speakers because you're doing all of the work to be able to comprehend this. But DNA has a syntax. And this is the same and very, very directly related to the world of numbers. So I love numbers, and I think that they're wonderful. Cheeky's over here drinking some water. You can give her a hug if you want to. Numbers have behavior in their natural form, and some numbers like to stand next to each other, but some numbers don't like to stand next to each other. And that means that in nature, if numbers self-arrange themselves, sometimes you will never have certain strings. Like the numbers just don't like to stand next to each other. Like maybe a 2 is allergic to a 7, and it doesn't like to stand shoulder to shoulder with the 7, but a 2 can stand next to a 5. You're like, okay, I'll stand next to this 5, but I'm not going to stand next to that 7. Like, just know that numbers have their own levels of personal predilections and comforts in the same way that molecules or atoms do in covalent bonding and other forms of behavior. Princess Cheeky's going into bed, so don't worry. And hold on, let me just make a little adjustment to my AC. Okay, so the protein structures that make up DNA, science is correct on this. There are 4 of them, and that's like saying there are 4 notes on my piano. So the 4 protein structures are abbreviated as A, C, T, and G. All right. And that is some things it is truthful. Like, because as you start to, I got so much to talk to about, I got to organize my brain. So as you're coming into this reassessment of like, what do humans really know? What do scientists really know? What do doctors really know? Sometimes people go into a whole rejection of the whole entire premise where they're like, I don't even think that DNA exists. Snap. I don't believe any of it. And it's fair. It's fair for you to become angry, inflamed, and confused. Let me hydrate. Like, I don't like any of this, and I just want to kind of like vomit it all back to you because I don't like any of it. And I'm like, please don't reject everything because some stuff is really true and valuable. So I am a genetic, intuitive, direct perceiver. I perceive this stuff, where's my little pen, with my tendril of attention. So if you're ever wondering, like, are these scientists just complete BSers, bull doo-doo, shovelers? PhD means piled higher and deeper. Are these guys just piling on a bunch of bull doo-doo and pretending that this stuff exists and then pretending that they get these scientific readouts in order to do this? How do I know? Okay, so I will affirm to you, DNA actually does exist. It's not a psyop or something that humans have simply invented, like, you know, a supposition like dark matter. That's something that actually doesn't really exist. But humans are like, look, if we say this is this and this is this, and something's got to fill the blank, let's call it dark matter and say that it exists. So science is like really like eye-rollingly inadequate in a lot of ways. So let's say rationalism and the rational mind is woefully inadequate to be able to accurately and effectively perceive the totality of existence and respond to the totality of existence because this is a post-rational existence. And rationality can only explain, describe, and perceive a very tiny level of the physical world. All right. So your DNA is a very, very real thing, but it is only being perceived as the tip of the iceberg. The tip of the DNA iceberg is being perceived by scientists and then in the modern world, and then it is being manipulated, tip of the iceberg, without recognizing all of the complex connections that DNA has to the entirety of time. And this is such a dangerous proposal because it means that they are literally flying blind. These scientists or medical professionals do not see anything. They are totally non-literate. They do not speak the language that they are working with. They are working with the building blocks of life. They do not speak the language of pure life. And what they're doing is basically seeing how much you can degrade that language or speak very poor sentences, very poor syntax in that language, and still have life. And in many ways, they are not intending to have life, they're intending to have death. In many ways, the research that is being done in various different laboratories in the world right now is to utilize DNA in non-natural combinations that are not only anti-life, but that are very, very likely to promote death. And that is a hugely irresponsible thing to do. So, like, of course, if you were in a language class, let's say you do not speak the language French, okay? And you are trying to learn that language. So you go to language class and you're saying things in all the wrong ways, spelling things in all the wrong ways. Your accent is terrible. And but luckily you're just a language student and your teacher says, well, I'll give you a C plus, go study harder. And that's the worst that happens. But when you're dealing with learning the language of DNA, and when you have a bad accent and bad syntax, and you do not know about the meaning of what you're actually saying when you put words together, you can make a lot of bad things happen. It's definitely children playing with firecrackers level of bad things, because it's not just about creating flawed protein forms in a person's body. Like if you say the wrong thing with DNA, you can definitely create a malformed protein structure. So that would look like a cell of the body or a cellular structure of the body, either not being formed correctly or not behaving correctly as a result of flawed DNA or flawed DNA messaging, right? And that can cause some harm and some disease, and also this is DNA as a connection to time and to events. This is what is underneath the surface, the iceberg that is unperceived by humanity presently. Humanity that has not yet activated their eye of time, that is playing around in laboratories with physical protein structures that are known as DNA, fictionally, without recognizing how much fictionally DNA is connected to time itself. And they are causing very, very negative time structures. DNA has been assaulted for a long amount of history as humans started to experiment with both electricity and chemistry. Molecular chemistry has largely been an assault on DNA because so first of all, force fields affect DNA and chemistry affects DNA. And things changed in the world, in your world, with the levels of human development known as the Industrial Revolution. That's the development of electricity, which makes force fields, and later on, the development of molecular chemistry, which makes chemicals. And both of these things were developed by very, very monstrous scientists. These scientists did not say, whoa, you know something? I better be careful because I'm working with a bunch of force fields and chemicals that could possibly mutate or change someone's DNA fictionally. I better be really careful about how I do this. They were like, la, 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 la. I think I'll pour some of this into some of this over here, and I think I'll spread it all over here, and I don't care about what's going to happen at all. I will do zero research in order to make sure that I'm not doing something to the entire population. I don't think I'll do this to the entire population, whether or not they care for it or not. So that's pretty much, let's talk about the deployment of electricity throughout the world, putting telephone poles and wires and other forms of electricity transferring devices across the landscape. Again, I have to hydrate. You know me, I need a lot of water, and I'm on a marathon here. But those force fields affect DNA, and this is also why I talk about the individual and spontaneous ascension process that people used to be able to experience. We talk about painting the rainbow body and some of these mythological and folktale-ish stories that come out of, usually it's Asia, people who spontaneously achieve their rainbow body. A lot of these stories are pre-electricity, because it was literally so much easier for people to be able to cultivate and master the activities of DNA and how the activities of the DNA dance have an impact on your chakras or your magnetic force field around your own body. It was a lot easier for masters to explore and perfect this dance before you got a lot of garbage into the atmosphere, which is essentially what electricity is. It is a garbaging up of the realm of pure frequency. And so when I talk about being a light eater and coming here and be like, just eat pure light. I'm like, how come I can't eat pure light? Electricity. I also noticed when I first came here, a diminished connection between myself and nature. Like I'm used to being able to be like directly talking to a tree, directly talking to a plant, directly receiving information and frequency inspiration from, a creature and not by eating them, but just by being in their presence and being with them or near them. And I realized I couldn't do that here either, that those levels of connectivity were being directly diminished. And so this was a problem as soon as I came into this world, even before the deployments of extra veils of limitation that make it very, very difficult for you to make these direct connections. And especially with the world of pure light, the sun and the stars, that you're supposed to be able to have direct connections with that level of reality, with that realm, on a level of complete sustenance, to eat all of that food instead of eating physical food. So it's not just that there's something wrong with you. You're like, how come, to use an analogy, you're like, how come I can't eat? Is there a problem with my mouth or with my tummy? There's something of a problem with your mouth and your tummy, but I have the same type of body and I've been changing my mouth and my tummy, and I found that it's not just my mouth and my tummy. It's also the sun, the sky, the satellite, the electricity. And that was the technology of that time over 20 years ago. It's worse now. My picture of bad stuff, worse now. Okay, so I'm going to get into more descriptions, but before I go by too quickly, here's a comment. So this is from Suzuko. She says, I've noticed I can't stand the smell of beef anymore. I've always loved steak and hamburger, but now the smell makes me gag and hamburger tastes like sawdust. And it's grass-fed from farmers too. Don't know what's going on. So let's talk about this. I hope that it's not truthful of you, but there is some tick that was genetically engineered, fictionally, to make people allergic to red meat. And sometimes people don't even know that they've been exposed. It is mostly a problem in the East Coast, like east of the Mississippi of the United States, but some of them have said that the ticks have spread to the West Coast as well. So, of course, this is all presumed from some bad software engineer whose name rhymes with Schmilflates. All right. Mr. Schmilflates created these terrible things because he wanted people to become allergic to cows, because supposedly the cows are ruining the environment. And they are not. Cows are not in any way, or cow burps, methane burps, or whatever, are not in any way ruining the environment. Far from it. And there's such a thing as regenerative agriculture and all sorts of things that you can do. So these are all like terrible fantasies that people are believing in that are nonsense fantasies. So yeah, you actually can have a whole world where people can access meat as protein. You do not have to have misery farms that are known as industrial farming tactics in order to be able to produce enough poultry or meat. And you certainly do not have to have these meat factories, which Mr. Schmilflapes is proposing to 3D print steaks and other things like that. In fact, those are an affront to DNA. A creature living on the surface of Earth, under the beautiful sky, drinking beautiful water and eating beautiful grass. This is the epitome of goodness in the world. That is what you want. A bunch of cell cultures that are essentially cancerous cell lines being placed into petri dishes, squeezed out and extruded through tubes, glued together literally with steak glue in order to create striations, and then, grilled or sous vide in a restaurant and brought to your plate. That is a monstrosity. That is literally like eating a cancerous tumor and is a gross, disgusting monstrosity. No one should ever do that. No one should ever eat that. No one should ever make that monstrosity. Just think about this. things that are monstrosities in DNA are things and combinations that would never come together naturally. You would never have a giant vat of whatever, like beef, liver cells just growing in a vat and then glued together into some kind of a protein brick. That does not happen. And I have to talk to you about the energy tendrils that arrange cellular structure. And iPhones has been plant-based for years. I feel great. Well, that's great to hear that for you. And I also will recognize some people do well on a plant-based diet that is completely related to their blood type. And your blood type is innate to your existence. So there is not a way to make a person who is an O blood type have the digestion and food utilization enzymes and capacities of a person who is an A or a B blood type. And the attempts to do so are as misguided as attempts to try to make a carnivorous animal, such as a cat or a dog, subsist on nothing more than pea protein, which is very, very bad for them as well. So the upshoot of all of this is you must eat for your blood type. O is the primal blood type, basically reflecting an ancestry that goes back to a time before civilization, before people created grain, fermented projects, and wheat flours and things like that. So people have O blood types do a lot better on primal food, stuff like grilled meats and nuts and berries and maybe, some vegetables. But not cooked vegetables, mostly raw and things like that. So mostly unprocessed foods like that. And some people do very well, that's like the A and the B blood types, on things that are quinoa, rice, barley, grain, because those are later blood types that developed with agriculture in human history and made it possible for those people's intestines and enzymes to break down those food products so that way they could thrive on those food products. In exactly the same way that many people from Asia and many Native Americans in North America do not have the innate capacity to break down lactose. This is the milk protein. They are considered lactose intolerant. So if they drink milk, in adulthood especially, or eat cheese, they get the worst stomach ache, total gas pain, and fart a lot. And so they do not enjoy those products. But other people from different ancestry that come from Sweden and Norway, their people develop the capacity to live on milk and cheese and butter because that's what was available to them. And they can eat milk and they don't get a tummy ache. All right. So this is really, really important stuff for you to recognize. Genetic diversity. You guys all have genetic diversity, and the diets that work for some people do not work for other people. It is not a one-size-fits-all scenario. Begin with that as your basic premise. Like as you're learning about flying rainbow lasagna, there is not an orthodox one way to do flying rainbow lasagna. And I would be very, very harumph, like upset if somebody tried to come along and say that there was. No, there's not. There's only the way for you to figure out, sorry, there's a fly in here, how to flying rainbow lasagna in your own body. And it's always going to be unique to you. And so I am really against orthodoxy of all forms, including dietary orthodoxy, exercise orthodoxy, or any other rigid formalism that tells you what you need to do with your body. How about fasting and other things like that? Like, you know what? Just because it worked for this guy on Instagram does not mean that it is correct for you. Fasting is not for everybody. Intermittent fasting is not for everybody. Let's talk about people's different body forms. Some people make great marathon runners. Do you know why? Because their body has figured out the way to be able to dole out energy over 26 miles. They don't use up all of their cash in the first 5 minutes. They don't spend all of their money in the first 5 minutes of the race. Their body can slowly expend this energy in a measured way over 26 miles. Some people's bodies are not good at doing that. Some people's bodies are only good at lifting 500 pounds one time. That's what their muscles are made for. Some people are only good at running 100 meters very fast. That's it. They used up all their energy and they're done. And these are things that are innate to each one of you. Just like when I talk about the optimizations that happen when you do genetic, flying your lasagna type of self-augmentation. Like my little dog, she is not going to change. My dog is a Chihuahua. She's not going to all of a sudden become some, giant German Shepherd or Great Dane or Golden Retriever. No, she's going to be the most excellent form of a tiny little Chihuahua that she can be. And as a very silly but brief aside, I did see this very cool picture that was from a trail cam. Who knows if things are real these days? But it was from a community where there was a little Chihuahua street dog that was very tough that they always saw around town. And then supposedly they didn't see him very much longer. And they thought maybe he got eaten by a coyote or a pack of wolves. And then they found one of these like infrared trail cam photos of the Chihuahua was adopted by a pack of wolves and he's running with wolves, which I think is just the most delightful thing, whether it's true or not, because I always talk about my dog being a miniature wolf. Okay. So Suzuka says that you're O negative, and also negative blood types are very special people. So please know that. So if you're an O blood type, you're going to do better with meat eating and primal nutrients and macronutrients, and also Rh negative people are really different than Rh positive people, almost as if there's two separate species. Learning more about this will educate you more about the various many times that humanity has been genetically modified, because the Rh factor literally is an allusion to the rhesus monkey. And it is a series of genes that have been sequenced in humanity that are really only found in the primate population. And there is not a comprehensible story that would tell us how that exact snippet of primate DNA made it into human DNA. And yet it is in a sizable proportion of the population. So if you're a positive blood type, it means that somehow you have these primate genes. But no scientists in this time and place, objective materialists, are willing to tackle this problem that is like at the foundation of some of this medical science. Because so there are real questions. If you have a partner, like you get married, you have a partner, you're supposed to have blood tests so that way you know whether you can safely have a baby with them, because Rh positive mothers will sometimes reject an Rh negative fetus. It is seen as a invader, and same thing with the other way around. Rh negative mothers will reject or sometimes be harmed by an Rh positive fetus. Apologies if I don't have that exactly correct, but sometimes you need a medical intervention, literally, to be able to breed with other members of supposedly the same species. Like, this should be a big clue to you. Like, you can't just safely make babies with anyone. You can't just safely make babies with anyone. Some people are optimum partners for you, and some people are not optimum partners for you, just based upon those levels of heritage and the capacity for you to, have successful pregnancies together. So we're getting into deep stuff. Okay, great. All right. So talking about food ingestion and blood type stuff. But we have to get into the uniqueness of your DNA and the uniqueness of what it takes for you to resolve your DNA. So let's say each one of us has been brought a certain amount of percentage away from the optimum DNA of being like an ascended master who can see through time, who's telepathic, who can manifest matter, you can really sustain yourself completely on light, like who you would be as a super being. And now we are each on a journey to heal and ameliorate the formation of the DNA until you get back to that original form. And I sometimes call this a restoration back to factory settings, even though you know that these are just silly analogies, and I'm not saying that you're transhumanist in any way. You have to comprehend that DNA is a molecular structure that is representation of an energetic pure potential. And now when I talk about this, some of what I'll reference is known in humanity as epigenetics, but this is actually more than epigenetics. Epigenetics is called the code that rules the code. So that's like saying you already have a blueprint. How is this blueprint interpreted? But I am even talking about the thing that predates the blueprint, the thing that makes the paper and the ink and the inscribing tools to be able to even make a blueprint. So let's talk about what happens in cell division, as DNA is something that is used to transport information energy over time. not only to the next generation, like if you are a mother, you will transmit the information that's in your DNA to your babies, to your sons and daughters. That makes sense. But also, whatever you are, if you are a parent, a mom, or a dad, or you've never had children, you are going to transmit the information energy that you contain right now to your future self. The cells that are in your body right now are going to subdivide. These are your parent cells, and they will become daughter cells, is what they're called, offspring cells. That will be the body of who you are in the future. And the transference of information from the parent cell to the daughter cell is done 100%, not, I have to rewind that, is not done 100% through DNA. It is done through DNA, but also through this potential or morphic field, but I have to call it something better. And also it is done through the information that is stored in the cell membranes. So now, what I'm telling you is fictional and totally not in concurrent with fictional medical science. So anybody, don't listen. You guys listen. All right. So every time something goes through your cell membrane, it makes an imprint. And the go through can be something that can be natural sunlight or infrared light, a beam of optical light, biophotons, or it can be some negative frequency that can be something like a Bluetooth frequency, something artificial light from an artificial fake thing in the sky, satellites, 5G, all of that stuff. These are all invisible frequencies. And the invisible frequencies go through the cell membrane. The cell membrane is fatty. It's made out of lipid cells. And when the lipid cells have waves go through them, the lipids kind of like, they jiggle like jello. And that is the waveform that is stored in those membranes. And cellular behavior and other things that are about like nutrient uptake, response to hormones and other neurotransmitters, and the behavior of the cell membrane and the relinquishment or connection of these different neurotransmitters, all these patterns are stored in the cell membranes. So when your parent cell subdivides and becomes the daughter cells, it takes not only the DNA that is inside of the nucleus, makes a copy and splits it into two, and then makes those the next generation, but it also takes the membrane. That is the outer covering of the entire cell that has been subjected to many different biological and environmental influences. And those influences are also passed on to the next generation. So there's a lot of things that are influencing the next generation, both in your offspring, if you have sons or daughters, and also in your cellular body as you're creating the you of the future. Because what happened with the membrane is your body responds to your environment. So what if there's a drought? If you're a plant, what if there's a drought? What if there's a lot of hot sunlight and not a lot of water? The membrane of the cell in the plant will remember that and will pass that along to the daughter cells of the next generation. It will say, sit down, daughter cells, I have a tale to tell ye. So gather around my rocking chair before I die. This past winter, it was very hot, it was very dry, and there was not a lot of water, and you must remember that it's a drought and that you have to act appropriately. So they're giving their wisdom and their behavioral lore to the next generation. Whether or not that's effective is questionable because sometimes there will be a drought in the next generation, sometimes there will not be. And each generation has to make its own choice. Be like, even though my grandparents' cell membrane tells me I have to conserve water because it's a very droughty day outside, I'm seeing nothing but, beautiful, abundant rain clouds. And I think that there's plenty of water. And I think I could grow a lot more foliage than what my grandparental wisdom is telling me. Okay. You guys face the same stuff in your own life as you heal ancestral trauma and the things that are told to you from your ancestors that are like, hey, you just came here through a trail of tears or some kind of a slave diaspora ship. You'd better store sodium in your body because you don't know when your next meal is coming from. And you can be like, no, I really don't need to do that. Thank you, grandparental generation, but this is not the great diaspora from Africa. This is not the Great Depression. This is not the Holodomor. I don't have to store those nutrients. So you can override these genetic wisdoms that are passed down to you. by making a very, very clear and concerted choice to say in your own mind, those things worked for the previous generation, but they don't necessarily work for right now. So this is an important thing to recognize. You can have a metabolic reset, not only from generation to generation, like from your ancestors to you, but also generation to generation in your own cell structures, in your own body. Because you can be like, okay, body, this is how you had to respond to the environment, last year or 5 years ago, but now this is how things are like now, and you can do this now, and that this is how you can recontextualize your whole entire everything. Okay, so when your cell membranes, when your DNA is about to subdivide, your nucleus has to organize itself. And it does so exactly in the shape that my fingers are in, where it makes these chromosomal half X's. Like if you can imagine this is half an X, like, here's the center where the X is connected, and then here are the two legs that kind of split apart. And all of these X's, so here's the genetic material organizing itself into these chromosomal shapes, X's, and we'll talk about that. And then it kind of splits itself apart, and then it organizes those X's, and then what it does is cuts itself down the middle. And then each one of those copies becomes the next generation. The important thing for you to comprehend is that when the DNA is going into that organized state, it is organized by a type of invisible energy that you could imagine. There's like sparks of energy that connect my fingertips together, right? But they're invisible. And that's what is really organizing the DNA into those perfect postures so that they split correctly into the next generation. You don't get fragments. Like, have you ever taken a piece of newspaper and tried to tear it perfectly in a line, but it doesn't tear perfectly, it kind of goes to the side, goes to the left, goes to the right, and you end up with your comics aren't really legible because part of it got torn off and part of it didn't. You don't want that to happen when you make the next generation of cells. You want to make sure that every time the margin or the split is right down the middle and that these are perfectly organized. The perforations is the word I was looking for. So there are energy patterns that dictate the behavior of DNA. Fictionally. Those energy patterns are what has been really, sorry, there's a fly in here, badly affected by electricity. Electromagnetism, definitely what people call dirty electricity, or electricity that is not properly grounded and that is being pulsed in non-natural, non-life-affirming harmonic pulses through neighborhoods, through the overhead power lines, but also through what people call telluric currents, or currents that are underneath Earth's crust. So what I promised myself today as I was preparing for class? I was like, I'm no longer going to kowtow to human scientific language. Many years ago, I was here to build a bridge between who I am and human objective materialist science. But now I'm like, no, throw it all out the window because a lot of it just belongs in the bin. So I used to be trying to build a bridge by using some of the same languaging and to validate science more than it really justifies or earns. But I'm no longer doing that because I think that so much of science deserves to go in the bin. But when I use a word like telluric currents, often I don't have, or morphic field, that's what I realized today. I have to start a new leaf because in the past I've been talking about this energy that organizes the molecules of DNA as your morphic field. Sometimes in the personal session work that I do with people, I will help them to go into and access their own DNA library. And in there, sometimes there's a pool that you can dive into and get refreshed. And that pool is your morphogenic field or your morphic field, but that's the human word for it. And I've seen it, again, flies in here, very annoying, in many different videos on YouTube. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is a good word for me to use to kind of build a consciousness bridge. But now I'm like, no, let's just throw all these things out the window. Let's not even try to build a consciousness bridge. So let's say instead of calling it the morphogenic field or anything like that, let's say that there is an organizational principle of divine intelligence consciousness that predates any amount of molecular structure. And it informs the molecular structure. And that is the shape of your true face. That's who you truly are. It's your identity, your characteristics, your dance, your soul signature, your unique flavor, and it absolutely writes the syntax of your DNA. So this is important for you to know because I was talking about the objectification of DNA and the objectification of body parts. Humans look at DNA as if it is not a holistic presence. You have to look at it as a holistic presence. You can't just say, I like part of this, but I don't like all of this. You got to get the whole thing. I don't have a good slang to be able to say this. Like it all is encompassing. There's not a way to only take a bite out of it and then not experience the rest of it. So this has to do with cherry picking of science, certain characteristics out of the DNA code, and then trying to either exacerbate that in offspring or artificially splice that into other organisms. Gene transfer. None of that is a positive thing to do because they are really, really imbalancing. The delicate balancing is what life arises out of delicate balance. They are imbalancing delicate balance from which life arises. So let's also talk about people's physical bodies and then transferring that objective viewpoint to DNA. So before humans even knew that DNA existed, people would look at people's bodies and like, I want to say like cannibals. They would be like this, like, I like some parts of your body, but not all of your body. You know, like this is like how people look at maybe people that they're attracted to. They're like, you know something? I'm attracted to your shoulder. I like the way your shoulder is shaped, but I don't really like the way your big toe is shaped. But I really like your shoulder. Instead of being like there's a whole person there, and the shoulders are nice, and they're part of the activity of the big toe. Like someone would be like, I wanted like take the woman, the arms from this girl over here, and the lips from this girl over here, and the breasts from this girl over here, and then the butt from this girl over here, and then put them all together. And that would be my ideal woman. Like there is not a way to do that. So that's part of that is the erroneous objectification of people that you're attracted to. But then sometimes it also is applied to people's own bodies. So it's not just in looking for a partner, but sometimes in people's own bodies. They're like, well, I like my shoulder, but I don't like my big toe. Like I like my teeth, but I don't like my fingernails. Like I like my this, but I don't like my that. And none of that is acceptable. So that's, first of all, it's not self-love. It's not self-compassion. It's not self-celebration. And it totally does not look at the totality of self as the totality of self. When you look at yourself, you have to look at yourself as an entire story, an entire genetic syntax. So this is what I mean when I say that as you regain your higher dimensional viewpoint and as you evolve and awaken the light body, when you get to that moment, you will not look at your body and be like, oh, like I wish that my legs were shaped differently. Like some people are like, they want to have longer legs, or they want to have a bigger or a smaller butt, or they want to have bigger or smaller breasts, or they want to have more this or less this. Like when you are in your light body and you're fully awakened and you look at yourself, you will not wish for another person's body parts. You will only wish for the optimization and total health and vitality of your own body parts. As I told you, some runners are great for running 26 miles and some are great for running a quarter of a mile. When you are in your light body, you will not compare yourself to others. You will not be like, oh, like I wish I had the long distance runner's muscles instead of the sprinter's muscles. Be like, no, I love my muscles. I love my fast twitch muscles and they make me run so fast. And same thing with the long distance people. They're not going to be like, wow, I really wish that I could run faster so I could win a race or something like that. And compare myself to others. Be like, no, I'm so happy that my metabolism works the way it does that allows me to run for 26 consecutive miles. Like these are amazing things. Same thing with people's minds. Like when you look at some things that are about putting this stuff into people these days, some of it is about going into people's brains to create systems such as Elon Musk's Neuralink, hydrate, and to artificially augment or supercharge or amplify certain areas of cognition or certain behaviors of the mind. And none of that is healthy. That would be like saying if you might have seen this, like maybe some guy who's an arm wrestler and all he does is work out like this all day long. So that way his arm wrestling muscles are extremely strong, but just on one side. So like this arm is small and skinny, but this arm is giant and muscular, and he uses it for his takedowns in the bar where he's going to do arm wrestling with people. Like this is not a healthy way to treat the body at all. Like that is a very, very artificial way of cultivating the body. I would not recommend that people do that because you're not made for that. Like you're made to be symmetrical. You're made to do natural and varied activities. In your mind development, you're not made to have like one area of your brain become hyper connected or hyper saturated with ideas and energy while the rest of your brain remains small, weak, wimpy, and atrophied. If you're going to do brain development, you have to do development of the whole entire brain. So humans, I'm giving you this diatribe today. I should have told you, like, beware of the incoming rant, lasagna rant here. Humans up until this point have been having a very, very destructive way of looking at bodies and looking at nature. I already told you about the scientific viewpoint of like comprehending nature by dissecting it. And so all of these are viewpoints about cutting things up into pieces and then doing stuff with it in pieces. And that's totally disrespectful to the whole and not how you get the entirety. Like the sum of the whole is definitely more than the individual parts. So cutting up individual people into either individual cells or individual organs or individual body parts, and then comparing them or measuring them in some way, or even trying to, we say Frankenstein, but it's Frankenstein's monster, connect them together in weird and unnatural ways. All of that is anti-life. It is very, very bad syntax. So you think about that, because I'm also very much like critical about stem cell transference from human being to human being, and also organ transplant. But Aurora, like it could save a life, but what you don't comprehend is that there are energetic cellular connections that are being very badly disrupted by these artificial, technologically created transferences and implants. Even if it is consensual, it is bad music that is disrupting the entire natural world. And it would be hugely narcissistic if you were a person, say, who had a heart disease, and you're like, well, give me a heart transplant. Like that guy's dead. He got smashed up on a motorcycle accident, but his heart is fine. Give me that guy's heart. Like, well, we can cut you open and we can sew that guy's heart into your chest, but it will destroy the fabric of space-time and consciousness. Do you still want me to do this? Like, that would be the height of narcissism, to be like, yeah, like, give me somebody else's heart. I want to stay alive. I don't care if I destroy the beautiful tapestry of time. Like, you can't do that. Cannot do that. But this is what is happening in our world right now. Not only medical science being tone deaf to the bad music and the bad syntax that they're playing, both cellularly and genetically, but also a wealthy class of entitled people who care more about moderate life extension for themselves at the expense of nature, at the expense of other people, at the expense of the collective of consciousness as consciousness is connected. So none of this is acceptable behavior at all. Like the doctors doing this stuff, not correct. And then when I say high status or high stratification people, like there are very wealthy people who have the capacity to go to a country like China, where there are people who are sometimes kidnapped, or people who are dissidents who are already imprisoned, who are used as these non-consensual organ donors. They don't even have a motorcycle accident that then gives them these organs to donate to wealthy people. They just overtly end their lives. So the accident is in quotes. Please know that that happens far too much. If you have enough money, you can simply buy a new heart. Someone else will, quote unquote, have an accident, and then you can continue living. Like, this is grotesque and monstrous and totally unethical on every level. Sorry, because I want to tell you about lasagna. But first, I'm telling you about all the things that are wrong in your world for like an hour. I'm like, Here's everything that's wrong in your world. You're like, oh, this tastes terrible. So, okay. But the positive things that I wanted to bring up are when you have your light body awakening or reactivation, how much you will be in profound celebration of yourself and of everything, the journey of your soul, what your consciousness has been through to bring you to that moment of illumination and enthusiastic divine connection, the way that your body part works. Like if you're a person, like someone said that they're celebrating their plant-based diet, hooray, that is what works for you. Someone else will celebrate the fact that they eat nothing but animal products, and that's what works for them. And both of you must be in mutual respect. Be like, if you're a manatee that eats only sea kelp, be like, hooray, I love my sea kelp. And if you're a dolphin who only eats fish and other forms of meat, you'd be like, hooray, I just ate some delicious sardines. Like, we cannot judge other bodies by the standards of our own body. That is a huge, huge lesson in individualization. And then also, when I tell you about like my flying river lasagna dance retreats and things like that, everything about my value system is, of course, I begin with good people. Like you all have good people and you have a good intention and desire to be good students of life. And like, because that's something that, like, if you don't have that, like, I can't help you out, right? Like, then you belong in the bin. But you guys are the good guys because you're trying. You're trying to be better. You don't have to be perfect people, but you are making efforts and doing everything you can to be better. So my job is to teach you, what is the concept of lasagna? What can it do within the body? And to give you examples in my own life of how I use it and how I embody it. And that's like just like saying that I'm going to teach you about like, what is a paintbrush? This is a paintbrush. It has these tiny, amazing little hairs over here. And then you know what you do? You like make some paint and then you put the paint on the hairs like this. And then you put it on the canvas like this. Like, I will not tell you what your subject matter has to be. I will not tell you that you have to paint either a bowl of fruit or sad clowns or happy clowns or flying rainbow lasagna patterns. I will encourage you to paint the subject matter that is important to you and the things that you are passionate about in your own life. So this is really important. There's a lot of things that you must shed culturally. You must shed not only cultural projections of what is beauty and what is an optimum body form, you must also shed religious ideals of what is a correct body and who you are allowed to be and how you are allowed to act. So there's a lot of stuff that are religious judgments about what you're allowed to eat. Think about all the things, like there's laws of kosher, and there's also laws in Islam of what you're allowed to eat. And then there's laws if you're a Hare Krishna, what you're allowed to eat. And then there's laws if you're a Jain, what you're allowed to eat. And then, there's laws of this and laws of that. Like there's a lot of judgments that are based about spiritual and moral judgments that are about what you put into your mouth for nourishment, as opposed to saying like it's all calories, you just eat what is available to you. So a lot of those are extra layers of contextualization and cognitive debris that you must remove from your expectations of food. And also when I talk about cultural expectations of beauty, you must purge yourself of those because there are some things that are considered universally beautiful. And those are things that are symmetrical. And those are things that are also harmonically perfect. And those are things that have a longevity to them. Like they last for a long time. And their beauty comes from the fact that they last for a long time. So some of the things that are in our present world that are considered as beauty characteristics in the body, I would not consider as genetic characteristics that you would want to encourage. Like, certain, like in our world, like I'll just talk about, like there's a lot of cosmetic surgery, a lot of implants that are done in order for people to achieve supposedly ideal body structures that I don't think are correct or actually ideal and that are quite unlikely, mostly in the bosoms of women. Mostly those are not naturally occurring or benevolent or positive body forms. But it's considered to be almost normative cultural expectation of beauty. And then women for many, many decades have been trying to conform to those levels of beauty by having augmentation surgeries. I'm totally against any of those types of augmentation surgeries because I don't think that they increase the beauty and the functionality of women's breasts. I think that they are, in many ways, take down people's body and metabolism, and that they are not part of longevity and coherence. So I would not think that, like, let's say you've got access to your genes, and you're like, whoa, if I've got access to my genes, like, turn up the volume on the boobies, right? Like, make them bigger, because then everybody wants us to be big. I'm like, I don't think that you should do that. Don't think that you should do that. Don't think that that is optimum for everybody in our world. So that's the type of artificial beauty standards that I'm talking about. So things that are like facial symmetry, also skin clarity, like when your skin is healthy, unblemished, and has a clarity and a radiance to it. That's genuine beauty. And so now you're starting to be like, well, wait a minute, Aurora. Like, a lot of people in our world put heavy, thick layers of pigments on their skin. I'm like, I know. And then they also do other things to make their body a different shape. I know. And then there's also a lot of chemicals that people take also to make their body look or behave different. I'm like, I know. And I don't really agree with a lot of that stuff. And so I hope that you can tell. So first of all, I'm not going to judge anybody who has to have reconstructive surgery because you have an accident or something bad happens to your body. Please know, like, if something bad happens to you, get reconstructed, do it. But I'm talking about healthy body parts. Because when we talk about DNA, like, you guys aren't like the scientists, but you might not yet know that it's really important for you to be responsible if, when you start to do flying rainbow lasagna, transform on a genetic level, that this is not just done for a capricious sense or a whimsical sense, or to try to look more like what society tells you is beautiful. Doing flying rainbow lasagna and transforming on a genetic level is a responsibility. And what you want to do is to optimize the events of your life and the potentials that are in your physical body so that that way you can keep on being alive in time, so that your body functions at the optimum level. Beauty is really, from, I would say, functionality, but a better way of saying it, because this relates to like an aphorism in your human world, is that beauty is truth and truth is beauty. So truth is accurate information. It's when your light body is structured correctly. It's when the original energetic tendrils of potential correctly arrange your DNA molecules so that then your DNA molecules will correctly arrange your proteins into the physical form that we see and perceive as beauty. The truthfulness is at the foundation of the energy that informs your molecules. Then your molecules also create a beautiful expression of that blueprint of the truth that is contained in there. So the precursor energetic field, I'm not calling it morpho or morphogenic field anymore, but it's the something before your DNA exists. Now let's talk about what is epigenetics, the prefix EPI. So I usually refer to the work of Bruce Lipton. This is never a full endorsement of the man. He was a good example when I first started this curriculum, because back then people really didn't know a lot about DNA at all. And people thought that just because something was written in your DNA, you were inevitably going to experience or express it. And Bruce Lipton was one of the first respected scientists to come forward and to say, identical twins don't get identical diseases. Something is going on here that is more than just looking at DNA in a mechanistic way, saying, if this is how your book is written, you're necessarily going to manifest this either positive trait or negative characteristic or disease tendency. So identical twins do not get identical diseases. You can have the potential in your potential in your DNA to develop cancer. This is fictional, and not necessarily develop it. But an identical twin might develop cancer. And that's because there are different environmental contributing factors that determine whether the potentials of a genetic disease like cancer are actually lived and manifested. And this goes back to the development of not only frequencies in the world, but also chemicals, because chemicals affect DNA behavior. So the things that affect DNA behavior are light, and this is called optogenetics. I'm not a scientist at all. They're developing these things in your world right now that are about very, very fast flickering lights that are flickering so fast you can't even really see it with your eyes, but your DNA can see it, and they're very bad, and you don't want these types of lights in your world. So get your LED lights out of your house, get your stupid compact fluorescent bulbs out of your house. Don't go near the violet street lights or any of these things. You know, it's another really disturbing one. These traffic cameras, they're not in my community, but they're in some communities. They're in like London and a couple of other big cities. They flash a light at you when you're moving past certain intersections, and it scans like your license plate, your registration, how fast your car is moving, but they also scan like your retinas and some aspects of your identity to be able to match that with who is driving the car. And all of this is like very high tech stuff, but please know that is an assault on DNA every time that happens, fictionally, in this fictional science fiction world where people get flashed with those lights. It is affecting DNA. So light affects DNA. And this is the behavior that is known as optogenetics. Another thing I wanted to tell everyone about is when you go through an airport, there's always going to be a gateway, a portal, a magical gateway that you have to go through to get on your plane. That is literally something that scatters your, yup, that's the real reason why you're going through that magical gateway of badness. And I can't say it on the platform, but I can point to it. Magical gateway of badness, because your DNA is doing a thing. So let's say this. The energy that informs your DNA and who you really are and your identity that you earned across soul lifetimes and magical multidimensional existences is making your DNA do your dance, okay? When you get to the airport, and they're like, thank you very much. You know, your bags will go through here along this assembly line, and you will walk through this magical portal so that this scattering can occur. And then when you go through and you're subjected to those frequencies, they're ostensibly looking for naughty and contraband items and things like that. But what they're really doing is scattering the energy that gives a cohesion to this very important body part. And then you get fragmented. It is nothing more than a fragmenter for this incredibly important, valuable part of your body. And then if you wonder why you feel vulnerable when you're on the plane with everybody else and you're like, oh, this guy's coughing and this baby's got snot running out of its nose and I hope that I don't catch something from other people, it's because your natural dance got interrupted, broken into a million pieces, and you're sitting there in your stupid metal tube trying to reconstruct the dance of your incredibly valuable body part that just got scattered by frequency assaults. So this is to say that there are a lot of apparatuses that are deployed in your world right now that have ostensible purposes that have nothing at all to do with their actual experience purposes, which is DNA, either behavioral control, modification, or disruption. And I try to avoid these like as much as I possibly can. Okay, so now let's page break. Let me read questions, and then we'll get into positive stuff about what is lasagna. Okay. And Suzuki says, yes, I feel like we weren't supposed to be cutting out body parts either because we want because we want someone to stay around. Absolutely. There are very real questions about medical ethics as it relates to bodies interacting with other bodies. So it's one thing, like you got a problem with one body, you cut open one body, you do something with one body and sew it back together, that's one body. But once you start to be like, oh, I have a problem with one body over here, let me cut open one body and cut open another body and take part of this body and put it into this body and then sew this body back up. You know, there are actual energy strings that connect the two bodies. Mind blown. Because humans don't presently look at energy. They're just looking at the cellular structure. And in very many mistaken ways, creating unhealthy energy dynamics by taking weird, random body parts out of one person and surgically implanting them into another. And none of that helps the longevity and coherence of the individuals involved or of the community. Mary Ellen's, it's a good thing I opt out at airport scanner. No good. Thanks for bringing this up. You're very welcome. And I would encourage everybody to opt out because they are definitely not good things to have to be subjected to. And definitely you also do not want, there are new things in airports that are scanning of the iris or scanning of the blood supply at the retina. And you don't want the light to go into your eyes to do those scannings either, because that's also disruptive. And Suzuka says it's disrespectful to God. And I completely agree. These are affronts to divinity. And it is, you can only insult God and be that impolite a certain amount before, like, you get thrown in the bin. It's like this organism is so disrespectful to DNA as the sustainer of life and consciousness, it can't be in the world of consciousness anymore. And so I was going to say this hilariously as I was preparing for class. I was like, so the problem is that you have a lot of people who are making, genetic combinations that aren't life-affirming combinations in your world. And I was going to say it in like a very, very funny way about like how much the problem is that you're part of the same species. This is what I'm trying to say. I'm sorry, my delivery is so bad today. The scientists and doctors over here are making these very, very haphazard and not very good genetic combinations that are very ill-advised, and that they're so ill-advised that they would all be thrown in the bin. Like they can't even be in existence as organisms when they're making those types of combinations. The only problem is they're a part of your species. So you got these guys that are like so badly informed and acting so pathogenically and so badly that they only deserve to like go in the garbage bin, and you are connected to them because they're part of the same species as you. And so you're kind of like, oh, like I'm not with this guy, like I'm not with them, but you're kind of with them. So that's the problem. Because if I was looking at this from like a total otherworldly category, you'd be like, oh, look, like the people that live on that earth in that time and place are all like very, very dangerous, screwed up pathogens that are making unhealthy DNA combinations. I think we need to get rid of them all. And you're like, wait, I'm not with this guy. He's doing it. It's him. Get rid of him. So that was the worst comedy routine ever, but that was what I was trying to think about as a funny way of saying it. But no, truly, we're not with them. We're not with them. We're not with these medical torturers who are literally torturing and disrespecting divine intelligence and torturing DNA with a lot of their experiments. And if I'm just going to go a little bit further on my tirade, then we'll talk about positive flying and lasagna stuff. That includes a lot of supposedly well-meaning scientists who are doing supposed research about crabs. These crabs research scientists are often heavily funded because everybody's going to run for the cure for crabs. And a lot of what they're doing is growing bad music in petri dishes. As they're growing the crabs to then try to make chemicals that will reduce the crabs, they are just making more crabs in the world. And none of this is reducing crabs. So they are really doing the opposite of what they should be doing. And let's also talk about chemicals. Chemicals affect DNA. So as chemistry became an industry in the post-industrial revolution world, the influence of DNA behavior through chemicals and molecular chemistry became a very real inhibitor in your world. And you might not know it so much, and you have grown up in a toxic soup of different things like phthalates, organophosphates, fake molecular chemicals and nutrients and things like that. But none of that stuff is supposed to be there. Like if you took a person from 500 years ago and you put them into your world right now, like their body would have a huge problem adapting because, but like not you, like you've been eating Wonder Bread, you've been eating saccharin, like drinking Tab or aspartame or whatever. Like you've adapted. You're like the cockroaches who refuse to die. You have adapted to all of these chemicals, but most of these chemicals are wildly not in alignment with life-giving genetic behavior. And please know that the chemical companies that make these things are also like, they are here to exterminate you. They are the cockroach reducers. You are the cockroaches, and you just happen to be like the success stories who have managed to be, subjected to the toxic soup, but not succumb. So you are doing something right in your life and in your, detoxification processes of your body. But no, you're not supposed to have to be exposed to all these chemicals. So if you want to know, like, in the Ascension billboard, like if you lived here, you'd be home by now. If you didn't have all of these chemicals in your environment, you'd be ascended by now. And this is true. And they put a lot of these chemicals in the food, air, the water, intentionally to help to reduce the natural movements of your DNA and the tendency for you to be able to ascend. Okay, so I want to talk about good lasagna stuff. And Mary Ellen was saying, but look at all the blood infusions. I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but I would definitely say, getting like a blood donation, like if you're having surgery or if you've had a major accident, you want to try to avoid getting any kind of blood transfusion from another person, simply because the blood supply has not really been tested for purity, as donors into the blood supply are not tested for certain diseases that they should be tested for. And also, some of them have had these things, and those things are not good to be in, like these types of things are not good to be in people's blood transfusions, as they tend to make people's medical conditions worse instead of better. And the blood supply is currently a mishmash of those who have both eaten the cupcakes and not eaten the cupcakes. This thing down here, this particular type of thing, I realize I also have to talk about, because as I'm telling you how tone deaf and, wildly erroneous and just like stinky and bad all of your doctors and scientists are, part of what I have to deride is their supposed sequencing. So as you start to become skeptical of all this, you might be like, does DNA even exist? It does exist. I know that because I can see it and sense it. But the way that scientists have been researching it, now I have to largely question, because I think that a lot of their machinery is inadequate and poorly calibrated. And they do different things beyond what I've described. They also do things that are about sequencing, which is when you look at the syntax of the 4 proteins, the A, C, G, T, that are in DNA, in order to be able to determine what is the genetic footprint or the uniqueness, the fingerprint of a particular organism. But there are very real questions about how accurate is the sequencing, how accurate is this view of what DNA is saying, and also none of this apprehends the value and information that is transmitted in DNA through its epigenetic behavior. And so that is its syntax. So let's say we have a very, very long, whatever. There's a little charging cord here that will represent DNA for the moment. A long string of the proteins that are known as DNA. And you're like, oh, this is what the story says. The story says, once upon a time, there was a girl who had a dog, and they went to the store together, and then they got dog biscuits, and they all came home, and they were all very, very happy. The end. All right, that's what the story says. But this is not how you read the story. You actually read the story like this. The story is curled up. Let's see if I can do this effectively. Curled up like this. And you actually read the story like this. And then it says something very differently. Then it says, the dog went to store and, flew in the sky. It says something totally different than what the original linear description was. And this is the truth of what your DNA is doing. Each one of these is a loop that is an aspect of supercoiling. And supercoiling is what your DNA does in order to fit an enormous amount of energy into a small amount of space, and in order to express its syntax. So in the English language, I barely speak English, because my brain is like, I got a lot of brain damage in my language centers. And so I've had to relearn language as if it is, relearn English to me as if it is a foreign language, which is why you often see me struggling with trying to find the right word, and which is also why my spelling and my grammar are very bad. So always like just blanket forgiveness whenever I send out emails and you see words that are spelled very badly. I take full credit for that. But in English, you have 26 letters. And out of those 26 letters, you can essentially arrange the letters to say anything, to impart any amount of meaning. You have to create blocks of letters that are words and then arrange the words in the correct way in order to give the correct meaning. And of course, it's very, very different if you say like, girl, go store, girl, no, go store. Like these things mean very, very different things. And then no girl, go store, or girl, no, go, no store. Like all these things, they mean different things. So I'm sorry that I'm saying this in such a silly way, but the order of the words has everything to do with the meaning that the words impart. The order of the proteins that your DNA structure is made up of is only tip of the iceberg of the amount of information that it conveys. There's also the information that is conveyed when it's in its coiled state and its supercoiled state, which is the chromosomal state. And then also, when it is in its partially coiled state, the DNA has a dance, a behavior. And that is the essence of what I'm here to share with you today. Flying rainbow lasagna is a new genetic dance behavior. So now let's talk about fun stuff. All right, because I already talked about very like boring and oppressive stuff, but now we talk about lasagna because I watched actually a wonderful video from years ago that I did that was pre-pandemic, and I'm like, of course, like it's all about lasagna. We have to refocus on lasagna as a tool for personal empowerment and genetic transformation. So first of all, I recognize I don't talk enough about lasagna. Now let's say lasagna is innately connected to this shape, the vortex or toroid shape. Your DNA makes a vortex or toroid shape. And when you add an additional dimension or an additional degree of freedom to this shape, you end up with this shape. I talked to you last week already about how DNA already has a natural behavior to unzip itself so that way mRNA messengers can get inside, look at the blueprint, make a copy or a Xerox, duplication, and bring that duplicate blueprint out to the work site where the imagined gourmet workers are going to eat sushi and maybe drip soy sauce on the blueprint copy. Because I don't know if workers genuinely eat sushi, because maybe they're just eating like peanut butter and jelly, but they're going to drip some food onto the blueprints. So that's why you make a copy, because you don't care if it gets soy sauce or jam or something like that on there. But because our world has a lot to say about what mRNA is, and it is not being respected at all in the present discourse about what it is and how that affects public health. In the positive sense, when I teach about flying rainbow lasagna, now let's just go into full-on lasagna. So the lasagna dance movement has 4 basic movements, just like I can say that my a chord on my piano has 4 individual notes. I'm only distracted for a moment because Princess Cheeky has arrived. She is here from her nap and she is playing with the toy in the back. So we'll just let her play with the toy. Okay. So lasagna dance movements, just as there are 4 individual proteins that in different complex combinations can make up the incredible variety of the totality of all DNA-based organisms and life on this planet and elsewhere. In exactly the same way, there are 4 basic movements that your DNA can do that are the basic dance movements. And when you combine them together in different combinations or syntaxes, you can mean or intend different interpretations of those structures. And mastering these different movements is essential to be able to be a master flying rainbow lasagna dancer. The first of the movement is an up-down. So this is the end result of a dynamic energy force field, this central violet point that is jumping up and down, okay? The first movement in lasagna is up-down. The second movement in lasagna is side to side. As the DNA, or the singularity point or the violet dot in the DNA is moving from side to side. The next movement is an in and an out. And then the last movement is, if you could imagine a square, something that begins at the top right or top left as a diagonal movement, beginning at the top and tumbling end over end like this, or beginning at this top over here, tumbling end over end like this, or that can be an underhand, like a softball pitch, starting at this bottom corner and then moving to the upper corner, or starting at this bottom corner and moving to the upper corner. When I do my hand dances like this, I am demonstrating for you what my DNA is actually doing. And this is the essence of what the dance is. A combination of these movements that relates directly to time, tells a story to time. The story is about not only biological cellular protein structures, but about events that happen. So sometimes I might do an up that at the same time I am doing a forward or an in out. Then I might do a diagonal. Then I might do end over end. Then I might do a side. Then I might do a back. And so you can start to see as I put these into combinations, just like being able to say, like with a chord, I'm playing an A, a C, and an E at the same time, and that these make music. Dun, dun. It's different than listening to single notes at one time. When I play these musics with my DNA, I'm not just doing it with one cell, all right? The DNA is in one nucleus of one cell, but I have trillions of cells. So that means I have a trillion pianos or a trillion guitars that each have vibrating strings inside of there. And what I can do is, with some of my cells, I can be pushing forward. And with some of my cells, I can be lifting upward. And with some of my cells, I can be going at the diagonal. And with some of my cells, I can be moving to the side. I can make an uncalculatable level of complexity number combinations with my trillions of cells. So even if you just had one cell and these four movements, think about like this. You have one piano. There are 88 keys on a piano. And out of those 88 keys, you have the entire history of music since the pianoforte was created. So that's like, the 1700s. 350 years worth of music is made out of these 88 keys arranged into different patterns. And they don't stop. The songs keep coming. People keep on playing these 88 keys in new patterns every day. This is exactly what we're talking about with DNA. When you have one cell, you have one piano. And even out of that one piano, you can create so many different combinations of movements of protein that you can create an endless number of songs, and that's just from one piano. But what about when you have two pianos, 10, a trillion pianos with a trillion piano cells? You can create such an uncalculatably large number of combinations of stuff that it is pretty much going to fry your brain. So don't think about it too much unless you want to fry your brains. But this is part of the strength of the system of DNA, that it is an unhackable system in terms of like evil, malevolence, and death and degradation of the system, because each one of you is so unique. And each one of the patterns that are playing through just one of your cells is so unique. And then when you add the complexity of all of these cells, you get pretty much an uncrackable password. Think about that, okay? Like on your bank statement or whatever, to access it, you might have a 4-digit PIN. 4 proteins, 4 basic movements of what you can do with your DNA. But if you have only, one password, like, okay, fine, like, someone's going to crack that code at a certain point. But what if you have like a trillion passwords that you have to enter correctly in order to access your bank account? You're like, no one, Aurora, in a million years could ever crack that encryption, because no one could ever guess accurately guess or predict or anticipate a trillion 4-digit pin codes. You can't do that. And that's exactly what's going on in your DNA. This is part of, I hope you're getting, the miraculous nature of what you are as a miracle in the miracle of life, created by the miracle of divine intelligence, the complexity of your DNA, the complexity of your multicellular structure, and the complexity of what that means as it relates to, let's say, the encryption of the privacy of your DNA. What you're going to access that no one else is going to access is incredible. And if I haven't emphasized that enough, let me re-emphasize that. You must be, I want to say, self-contained or sovereign in your own DNA, even as you recognize you're in an ecosystem and you are part of the world and you are influencing one another. So now is where we get to one of my lectures about like your personal responsibility balanced with your responsibility to others and to your community and to your environment. Because you want to dance, you're like, I'm looking out for number one. I want to dance with my DNA. I want to dance like this. And I was like, okay, that's good. But also recognize you want to have plants and animals around you and a planet and like the laws of nature, so that way you can keep on being alive and in existence. And if you don't dance in certain ways, then you don't uphold the things that uphold you. So when I talk about optimizing your biological, container or your flight through time, when you start to be a master of your DNA, you can't just be like, well, fine, I want to grow like 12 eyeballs, and then I also want to grow fangs, and then I also want to have like giant wings and a tail. Like, none of those things are going to serve your community, and doing that to yourself will probably really destabilize your community. And people are doing all sorts of bad things right now with genetic augmentations and modifications of themselves or the next generation. And those things are really, really antithetical to yourself staying alive or the next generation staying alive. Some of those modifications are these things, but also some of those modifications are like through IVF and different, what do you call them? Like experiments where people want to have a designer baby. They're like, yep, I want to have a whatever baby with blue eyes or blonde hair or whatever is the desire for, like, I want a baby who's good at math. Like, I'll pick a dad who's good at math, and then we'll snip those genes out of that guy and put them into this egg over here. Like, none of that is good. None of that is respectful of life. And all of that is the disrespectful objectification of certain characteristics. Like, if you're good at math, that's great, but you also have to balance it out with being good at this, and this, so that way you're a totality presence and you do good things in the world. Same thing, like, with your body or whatever. Like, we were talking about the arm wrestler who grows an incredibly giant bicep muscle so that they can take down other people at the bar. But here's the truth. Like, if you grew a giant arm that was like 100 pounds of pure muscle and, was meant to be able to be, like in combat with other people. But what if you don't grow a spine that's as strong as that? Your arm would be like so heavy. You would walk around like this all day because your arm would drag you down, and you did not grow the postural muscles to actually use that arm. Like, these are ridiculous things. These are like, kind of like, I don't know if you were ever a kid, like as a cartoon, like when you're exploring cartoons or something like that, if you ever drew them and you're like, now I'm going to draw this, superhero character, and he's got like, a giant arm, and then he's also got like whatever, a tat. Like, these are ridiculous mishmashes that are not real life. Can't make life in this way. And scientists have already been doing very, very ill-advised stuff with transgenics, putting together organisms that would never come together, like a fish and a tomato. Literally, there's some genetically modified tomatoes that contain DNA from fish because supposedly it's going to help the tomato to stay fresher longer. None of that is good. Okay. Wipe it all away. Now let's talk lasagna. Okay. So you are here in order to learn and embody lasagna. Flying rainbow lasagna is a behavior. It is a way of dancing with your DNA. It is a way of oscillating the energy field that is the precursor to the molecular structure that is known as DNA. So you are literally dancing with time. You are dancing or moving in a rhythmic fashion the invisible frequency, tendrils, and force fields that are what organizes your DNA into chromosomes, into packages, and into larger complex syntaxes. DNA does respond to thoughts, to emotions, and to intentions. These are the aspects of yourself that are based purely in frequency. Your DNA structure and your identity are largely an outgrowth or an expression of that energetic truth of who you are. And the energetic truth of who you are cannot be scattered by one of those gateways that you must go through in the silly airport. Your sense of self, hopefully, is strong, and your identity is strong. And so if you go through a disruptive force field, it breaks you apart for a second, breaks all these genetic connections. Then you get out of the presence of the force field, and then your body is like, oh, SHIT, I better put myself back together. And how do you reconstruct yourself? You reconstruct yourself literally in light of the connective energetic tendrils that tell you how to place these molecules together. And that sense of self is your factory settings. That is your divine self. That is immutable and indelible and cannot be changed or erased. So this is also big stuff because let's say you have your DNA going in a particular direction and then someone's going to artificially either like slice it, take something out of there or splice something into there or pour some chemical on there so that things act or behave differently. But none of that changes the original energy tendrils that are what informs the action of your DNA. All of these things are projections of behavior or behavior limiters on top of DNA. So it's not a foundational structural change, but it is a surface level change that does evidence a change in appearance, but it's not a structural appearance. So it would be the equivalent of like makeup for DNA. Like people put makeup on their skin, they are putting a layer of pigment that makes it look a different color, but it does not change the foundation of what the skin actually looks like. The DNA, when you put a chemical on it, something that is a carcinogenic chemical, changes the structure of DNA by molecularly assaulting it, by chemistry assault. But the energy of what the molecules are arranged as and the story that they tell in time remains undiluted. And so that means if you're healthy and if you're strong and you just get out of the presence of that chemical, your DNA returns to its correct behavior and its correct format. So I see that there's a question here, but I'm going to keep going with FRL. We'll get to your question a little bit later. Okay, so thank you for that. Okay, so I talked about the 4 behaviors of what FRL is. Okay, so flying rainbow lasagna is a higher dimensional state of what your toroidal energy field is. Your energy field is created by your DNA and by the dance of your DNA. So your DNA is already dancing. It's not static at all. It's already dancing, and it is doing a dance that is the behavioral end result of some aspect of your innate nature, some aspect of what human society has taught you when you came here as a baby, some aspect of what your individual ancestry tells you, grandma, grandpa, and earlier, some aspect of what your mom and dad tell you based upon their direct tutelage or mentorship of you. And that is why you are dancing in the way that you're presently dancing. Some of those stories are incorrect, like stories about mortality. When you come here as a little tiny child, you're actually dancing a beautiful, expansive dance. That is the dance of immortality. And as you learn language, which is very, not a natural way to dance with your mind at all, and as you start to become cognitively aware of the concept of death, your parents or someone in your life will teach you death is a concept. someone in your life or something dies. You witness and see and experience death. And when you ask about death and they say, oh, your goldfish died, it went bye-bye. Let's flush it down the toilet or bury it in the garden. Or maybe your grandma died and you ask, where is grandma? And your mom says, grandma went bye-bye forever. When you learn that that is what death is, your DNA changes from doing these beautiful movements inside of your nuclei to doing smaller, choppier, more limited movements. So I've diatribed a lot today against or ranted against human science and the way that human science talks about DNA. Human science talks about DNA and chronological aging as being related to telomeres, which are aspects of, the reproductive, like how many times you copy or reproduce an image. But I encourage you not to think in those terms anymore. I think those are things to throw in the bin. So don't even have to think about telomeres, but think about the type of dance. Like if you see dancers, some dancers are like, swirling and they're free and they're looking amazing and they feel great. Like that's your DNA as you're supposed to be. When you think of yourself as an immortal, eternal presence, as an inevitability particle, like swooping through time, right? When you think of yourself as a mortal being and you're like, I'm gonna die, your DNA literally acts in a different way. And the movements are not as expansive. The movements are smaller, like wearing a constricted garment or something like that. And the movements also are not like these beautiful circular and figure eight natural movements. The movements become more like angled and not natural and not good. And so, of course, science is not prepared to perceive or measure these differences in DNA. I can see and sense these differences in DNA, but science can't sense it. So at this point, just throw science out the window. Okay, it's not going to help you from this moment on. But in your own self, you should be able to go back to and remember a time when you didn't know about the clock on the wall, like you didn't know about what time of day it was. You didn't know about money or math or any of those things, heating bills or anything like that. You didn't really know about the potential of death. And you might have to go all the way back to like before you were in kindergarten, like some very, very early time. But that's when you will find your pattern for your natural DNA behavior. And hopefully, you can remember that and reestablish that. It's a very joyful pattern. And it's unique to you. And it's who you were before all of these cultural limitations and impositions were placed upon you. So I am here as a template and a mentor and to remind you of what that feeling state is. And hopefully to encourage you to get back there. So when you do lasagna, you got to get out. I call it decolonize your mind. You got to get out of your colonized approach to life. So before I dance with people, I bring them through a warm-up where you're not just stretching your muscles and your tendons and getting your body going. You're doing that because you can't just go from like 0 to 60. Like you got to warm up the car, but also you got to get out of your regular mind state because most of us have a logical mind state where we're using our rational intellect to go through each moment of the day. And most of us have a laundry list where you get up and you're like, okay, I got to do this. And then I got to make lunch for so-and-so. And then I got to do this. And then I got to do this chore. We got to do laundry at some point. We have to take care of this. We have to take care of this. We have to get this done. Like the intellect gives us an anticipatory laundry list and to-do list. And I know it's important to have life goals and to do these things. I want you guys to be successful. But to lasagna, you have to get out of that mind state because that mind state is not your natural mind state and not your natural connection to time. So you have to disengage from the laundry list and you start to do that by just going into your body feeling, just beginning to stretch and warm up where you start to feel like, oh, like this is what my spine feels like. And this is what my hip joints feel like. And these are what my toes feel like. And the last time that you might have been in these mind states might have been when you were a little baby, when you were like, fascinated by your body, like, wow, like these are my hands, or like these are like, when you're a little kid, you put like things in your mouth and you feel your body and like roll around on the floor. And I encourage people to be in an infantile mind state to when you start to explore your body. because your body is a miracle, and this culturalization and intellectual talking mind is a projection that takes us out of that miracle. So you have to get back into your miraculous mind state, and also to get back into the recognition of your body as a type of biological supercomputer, because these motions that your DNA is or are making, they're beyond your rational intellect. Whether or not you think of yourself as an intelligent person or a person who is good with math, you're like, you might think that I'm not that smart, I'm not that good with math. I hope that you think better of yourself. But I always affirm to people, you are a genius. Your DNA is a genius. Even if your cognitive intellect, you don't think that you're a genius, or you wouldn't score very well in one of those tests. Like, I never know that I am not good on those tests either. I have no idea what the right answer is. They're like, here's a series of numbers like this. I'm like, I have no way of knowing. I get very stressed out by those tests. And I'm a smart person. But you must think of yourself as a genetic genius, that your body knows what it needs to do. And as you start to press pause on your cognitive intellect and be like, okay, I'm going to do my flying river lasagna dance. For right now, I am not going to use my intellect. I'm not going to ask why questions or how questions, or try to look at the world through rationality. I'm going to experience the world through my feelings, like my senses, and through connecting to my body. And what you start to do is you start to notice that your body has a series of complex patterns that are being performed. Some of those patterns are cell-to-cell communication, and that happens at the level of the membranes. Remember, I was teaching you about the membrane that subdivides and becomes the daughter cells? The membranes talk to each other like the skin of a drum that vibrates and sends out music, but also through neurotransmitters. You also have cell-to-cell communication through mitochondria. They're a part of your light body. They're like musicians in the band. They're inside of each cell. But the guy, that's like saying, I'm inside of my house, you're inside of your house. But we talk to each other from inside of our separate houses. The mitochondria all throughout your body all talk to each other from inside of their separate houses. Then you have your DNA. And your DNA is inside of each one of your nuclei, but it's connected to the whole. And the miracle of that each cell is unique, but each cell is part of the whole. Each cell has its own DNA blueprint and individual behavior. It's not like the Rockettes with dancing. They are all unique, but they all harmonically integrate. So the Rockettes, those are the girls that you see in New York City at Radio City Music Hall. They stand in a line and they all have, imagine these are like legs. They all like kick at the same time. They all like, like kick, 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 kick. Like they all do that in unison. Your DNA does not do that. You literally have trillions of individualized cells who do not dance like the Rockettes, but they all dance in ways that are integrated and harmonious or complementary to the whole. So you do not have conflict. The cells of your heart are doing their particular wonderful dance, and the cells of your brain are doing a different, wonderful, particular dance, and they both feel good together. This is the essence of what you're trying to do as a holistic presence. When there are cells that are doing their own unique dance that doesn't feel good and add to the rest of the body, that's this stuff over here. But this stuff over here can be created by frequencies, chemical exposure, and also exposure to certain mind states, emotional states, or cognitive frameworks that are not life-affirming. And as I told you, some of this supposed medical science that is fighting against that disease is actually making that disease happen by growing that disease in various different research petri dishes to try to stop that disease. That is not how you stop that disease. There's also a lot of conversations in the community about that disease that are supposedly about stopping that disease, but that do not stop that disease. They just make you think about that disease more. And that they make you think like that disease is going to be in your body. If you think that that disease is going to be in your body, much like death, your DNA starts to act and dance in a way that accommodates that potentiality. So I'm not saying that, oh, that the people that get that disease are all like, you know, dancing willingly in those patterns. A lot of the time they're unwillingly dancing in those patterns. A lot of the time they're dancing in response to propaganda that might be from family members, community members, or medical scientists, or cognitive expectations. Identical twins do not get identical diseases because you know what? One twin might be thinking and feeling very different thoughts with their mind and their emotions. And they also might be exposing themselves to different or less carcinogenic chemicals. And they might also be doing particular maneuvers with their DNA that are unique to them. So some of those maneuvers that are important are the accessibility of certain genetic structures, and some genetic structures might be hidden deep within the supercoiling process of DNA, which is known as methylation. Imagine scrolls, like ancient papyrus from ancient Egypt or whatever. They're scrolled up, and if there's information that's deep inside of the scroll, it is difficult for the DNA to access that information. So this is the essence of what methylation is and the essence of what flying rainbow lasagna is. When I teach you about activating or making available certain genetic patterns and turning down the volume or entropizing other genetic patterns, it has everything to do with that process of what is uncurled and what is curled up. So in your DNA, in order to access any part of your DNA, read it as a blueprint, make a copy as an mRNA, make a protein structure or an event in reality, the DNA has to do this complex maneuver where it uses enzymes to snip, to release the potential energy of that which is all twisted and curled up. When it's twisted and curled up, it is a solid, almost impregnable shape that you can't get inside of the scroll. So to get inside of the scroll, you have to release a little bit of tension. There's enzymes that snip. And this is part of the sacred dance of your DNA. Snip, snip, and then open up the scrolls of that book. If you're in a chapter of your body that is the how to grow a bad disease chapter of your body, and you open up those pages and read, then you can grow a terrible disease. And the likelihood of opening up those pages and believing in and growing the inevitability of that disease is directly related to your thought structures, your emotional structures, and your community. People tell you this is an inevitability, and if you believe in the inevitability, it opens up those pages. It is read from the potentials of your life, and it is then manifest. But if you do not believe it, do not accept it, do not exacerbate it, or do not make it a part of your worldview that it can happen, then you keep those parts of your scrolls tightly scrolled up. The how to grow a tumor chapters are tightly scrolled up. Here's another important concept. If you have grown or expressed tumors or cancerous cells, the solution is in your scrolls. The how to dismantle a tumor pages are the most important chapters for you to be able to access. They might be tightly curled up, especially if you have been indoctrinated with a belief system that says if you get a particular disease, then there's nothing you can do. Sorry, kid, you're out of luck. There's nothing you can do. If that's what you believe, because that's what you have heard in terms of propaganda, those scrolls will stay closed. And fictionally, it will not be possible for you to be able to access that information and restore yourself. All right. So please know that you contain potentials in the inside of your DNA that are beyond what medical science would allow you to imagine. These potentials exist for non-chronological aging. I'm an example of non-chronological aging. I have been here for over 20 years. I have not aged in the same way that chronological aging ages people. I have gotten athletically better. I have gotten, more capacities, evolved and grown. Because people in this world try to say like you hit your peak when you're like 25 or maybe 30, then it's all down here it's all downhill from here, kid. And that's why I always thought it was so weird when they said like, after 40, you are over the hill. And I'm like, what are these people talking about? Like, None of that was ever my truth. I live that truth. I hope you guys can see it and sense it in me. Okay. No, you do not have to grow worse and more decrepit as you're moving through time. So, programs and expectations of chronological aging. Um, what are some other aspects of transcendence here? So many. So I'm sorry if I like hit a wall there because I actually to like recalibrate my brain of the things that I want to share with you. They're all important things. So potentials for non-chronological aging as you move through time. Also, disease avoidance or prevention. So clearly, I'm healthy and have not created some of these diseases that we're talking about and that, are potentials in life. So much more than that. Restitution of the higher faculties. Of course, this body, as I came into it, had potentials for the use of the pineal gland and the higher faculties. I way potentiated. I mean, I've done so. I hit a wall because I'm like, where do I even begin? I moved into this body house, and it was like a DIY and a handyman special, and a lot of things that had to be fixed up, like just to be able to walk around and do stuff. And I did that, but I did things very artistically. So I did a bunch of things with my body, with being able to like portal nutrients all around, to be able to be hyper efficient in like transmitting glucose or neurotransmitters from place to place where they need to be, and also from like transmitting energy from place to place in your mind, because I have a lot of dead ends and blockages and like places that are melted in my brain. You can't get around them, can't get through them, you can't get in there. So I do a lot of like portaling with my neurology to get around this thing. So I'm just trying to like, I didn't prepare enough on this part for class, like how I changed all these things, but let's just say, so like I did a lot of positive improvements in how my body form can be optimized by transforming the behavior of my DNA and doing things that are not possible according to medical science, but I do them every day. And that's why my life is much better than my original prognosis in, coming into this body and, having brain damage and things like that. So please know that same potentials exist for you in your own body. I can give you tips and pointers for how to apply these things to your own body, but you must always customize them for your injuries or things that you've been through or challenges or anything like that. So I exist as a template of potential, but you must take those potentials and run with them and do them yourself. Okay, now let's talk ethics. Because when I say Flying Rainbow Lasagna is like an open source code, that is exactly what I mean. In the open source software community, and I'm not a transhumanist, I just use this as an example, you're not allowed to like take something and take credit for it. If someone creates a software program, like whatever, an app for your phone or whatever, and they make it open source, that means that they are making the potential to use that computer program available to you without requiring a fee, without requiring a subscription, and with the agreement that you will respect their contribution, give them credit as the originator. You can't pass it off as your own. Open source does not mean that you can take someone who created a new app and steal their app and say, that's my app, I made it. You can't do that. And also, it does not mean that you can access everything that's on that guy's phone. He made the app. You can download a free version of his app, but you cannot get everything that's on his phone, and you can't access his phone's battery power. And you can't access his like bank account or his heart. When I offer to you the concept of and behavioral example of what Flying Rainbow Lasagna is, it is literally a new potential of what you can do with your DNA. I am the first person to ever do this. I bring it to you as a gift, just out of complete enthusiasm and generosity. That's who I am. And even as I came here into this world and was exposed to the concept of commodification, concept of copywriting, and the concept of, a subscription or other forms of proprietary ownership, I was like, no, none of this feels correct in terms of lasagna, because I came here to teach people about it. Like, I'm like, have lasagna. I want you to have it. But none of that means that someone else can take this concept and misportray it as if they are the originator. Take the concept, but just give me the credit. You got this concept from Aurora. And also, none of this means that with flying rainbow lasagna that you can get energy from my body. No, no, you can't get my energy. I need my energy from my body. I need my heart. I need my brain. I need my uterus. No, you can't have my energy. And same thing, you can't just have energy from my bank account. Like, I need my money in my bank account. Like, everybody, pay my bills, like everybody. I need my money. So none of this is like free for all or some kind of an open offering. My offering is limited and conditional. Open source does not mean here, you can have everything. Walk on in and eat out of my refrigerator. I'm like, no, like that's my grilled chicken in my refrigerator. I can't eat my chicken. But I want you to learn the recipe for how I make my chicken or do my things. Then I want you to make it yourself. So that's the better way to think about flying rainbow lasagna. This is like a recipe. And there once was a type of cookie called Mrs. Fields cookies. I don't know if they're still here, but they were very expensive and they were like a secret recipe. And then someone got the recipe and they publicized it everywhere so that everybody could make Mrs. Fields type of cookies. And I want you to know that I want you to make lasagna. I am not the type of person or the motivated as a person who is like, no, I am the only person who's allowed to make these cookies. And all of you will have to buy my cookies, but not make your own cookies. And then I'll be the cookie millionaire, right? Like that sounds like a great idea. No, I actually want to live in an even better world than that. Because in that world, I would be genetically perfect and you'd all pay me a lot of money and I'd have a golden toilet seat because you pay me so much money. But all of you would be like genetic peasants. You wouldn't be able to do anything. You'd be suffering with diseases. You'd be feeling terrible. You'd be chronologically aging, and you'd be sending out quality of genetic music that is not ideal and not life-sustaining. And I'd be like, here's me sipping champagne from my golden, castle that I'm able to pay for the money that you pay me for my access to flying rainbow lasagna ideas. But you guys are all struggling and your music is very bad. So I'd be like, wow, my life is great. I'm so comfortable, but all of their music is terrible. And that's not actually a good life. It's actually a bad life. Don't like that at all. That I find it to be more valuable and more positive if I can fly rainbow lasagna and optimize my body and optimize my time mechanics and my flight through time and teach you guys how to do something similar in your life so that you optimize your lives as well. Your bodies become healthier. Your timelines become optimized. You emit and create and share your gifts into the world. And I'm like, oh, look at that. Someone's sharing their gifts in the world. This is awesome. That is good music. And I am happy to hear that music of life and music of joy being played or performed by that other person, by that other individual. That's the essence of who I am. So I am innately generous, and I also find that it serves me or pleases me or fulfills me more to share my gift with the world than to try to commodify this. And that's the essence of what I mean when I say open source code for your DNA. So it's something that I am here to teach you to do and to inspire you to do, but you can't steal from me, and you got to figure out your own way of doing things because it's not impostership. So think about anything like, someone who's a very, very tall basketball player, and they can do something like just walk right up to the basket and just go like, blunk, like they're tall enough to do that. They have the muscular skeletal structure to be able to do that. But someone who's 5 feet tall can't do that. They're going to have to find a different way to make their baskets in life. Okay. So in me and in my life and in my body, I have certain abilities that are like, okay, I can just walk right up to the basket and go like, get the basket in there, slam dunk. And you guys might have a different body, different abilities. It doesn't mean that you won't do it. It means that you have to find a way to do it that works with your bodies and your capabilities. So take the lasagna, apply it to your own lives, and then dance in these unique, individually fulfilling patterns that work for you. You cannot put together DNA structures in random patterns. So even as I was using this electrical charging cord as an example, like you have the four proteins, A, C, T, G, and they're going in a line like this, but then you also have the coiled up, super coiled version, the Snoopy sweater, that is knitted together and what the picture looks like when all these things are coiled together. You must have good spelling when you have the letters in order like this, and you must have good syntax when your letters come together in order to create a genetic word that is like this. And then you also have to have your moves, dance moves. You got to have the moves when you're moving like this so that everything looks good together. And then you also have to integrate your moves with the larger time structure around you. Those would be larger time currents, like the entire ecosystem that you live within, human dynamics, the galaxy, consciousness elsewhere, the world of pure light, all of that. You have to integrate yourself with all of that. So it's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot. This is when I also talk about how experts do star travel. This is how experts do star travel. That what I'm giving to you is a way to be able to restore your genetic behavior and also to augment yourself anew as if for the first time with the capacities to connect to the world of pure light and pure consciousness or pure intelligence and to travel in that world of pure light and pure intelligence. I want to get to your questions and comments, but I also want to make sure that I got everything that's important here. Hold on a second. Hold on, pardon me while I squint and scroll. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a little pause. Hold on, pause for a moment. For that little pause, as I was reading through my notes and making the most ridiculous squinting and scrolling faces, I realized that I have to talk to you about DNA and your connection to time and how you experience time. So, I'm holding up this and I'm showing you there's like a linear expression of your DNA looking like a line, like one piece of yarn that then gets either coiled up or crocheted together in various different loops or, knitted together in interwoven fabrics and tapestries. The same thing is going on with your DNA and your connection to time. Hold on a second. Let me look at my notes and what I was just saying for here. No, wrong thing. Hold on. Coming out of a world where you're experiencing time in a linear fashion, just like the line of letters that makes the different codons of your DNA, and scientists are being very linear. And you're looking at time as like first breakfast happens, then time goes on, then lunch happens, then time goes on, and then dinner happens over here. When you into flying into lasagna with your DNA, what you begin to do is experience time in a nonlinear fashion. You are doing more than just transforming the structures of your cellular body. And you're doing more than transforming your thought forms or your emotional state. You are transforming your experience of and connection to time itself. When you become your higher dimensional self, you can see it in this structure, and you can see it in my paintings and my clothing here. There are these 4 lobe shapes. And those lobe shapes are really something that is around your physical body. And they are kind of like wings that you can consider them to be your higher dimensional or multi-dimensional wings. The wings of who you become when you are a butterfly of consciousness. So when you are 1 or 2 dimensional, you're like a little inchworm, an ant, or a little crawling creature that crawls along on a leaf like this and can only go like in one direction, right? Very, very different than the perspective of, motivations of, and life of a butterfly that has gone through the metamorphosis process and transformed, changed state into a completely new format, which now has wings that allow it to jump off the 2-dimensional surface and to fly in a nonlinear pattern. When you are able to fly in your lasagna with your DNA, all right, you are doing a higher dimensional dance. And what that means is that you no longer experience breakfast, and then lunch, and then dinner. You might jump directly with your wings of time from breakfast to dinner. You might jump with your wings of time, breakfast to dinner in 10,000 years. Imagine my arm is like 5 miles long, 10,000 years. Or you might jump from breakfast today to breakfast 10,000 years ago. My arm is 10,000 miles long in that direction. Or you might jump from breakfast here today to another dimension that is not even involved in time, and then jump back. You begin to have a non-linear experience of the presence of time. And again, the perspective and worldview of that version of yourself is almost unimaginable to the caterpillar-like inchworm going along on a two-dimensional surface. Like who you are right now, you're living according to the clock. You're like, oh, it's 4:21 p.m., time for this or that to happen. But you really are able to experience things when you're flying rainbow lasagna as, how can I explain this? Taking a scoop of genetic inspiration from a variety of places, organisms, and versions of self at one time. So you're moving even beyond the complexity of playing a trillion pianos within this genetic structure of this cellular body, of this moment, because you have parallel lives. And those parallel lives are going to be evidenced by these different fingers, like different timelines, all right? And so here you have a trillion grand pianos that you're playing in genetic chords of music, all right? And you also have genetic piano here, and a genetic piano here, and a genetic piano here, and a genetic piano here. And that's just a simplification. You have 10,000 million billion genetic pianos. And when you fly rainbow lasagna, you are at times jumping or reaching from this moment here and now, with all of your time tendrils, out into all of these otherworldly places, grabbing scoops of genetic information and then bringing them back here into this moment. And it just takes that fast. And you're like, kapow, I just got a bunch of ideas and inspiration from all of these other parallel, past, concurrent, and future potential selves. And it's like reading a book in a library. If I go to the library, if you're good and you go to the library, you treat the books with respect, you never would cut words out of the pages. You read the pages and you leave the pages behind. You take the information from the pages. You do not eat the pages. When I offer Flying Rainbow Lasagna as an open source code for you to be inspired by, it is like giving you a library book that you can learn from the information in the pages of that library book. You absorb that information, but you would never tear out the pages. So you would never chop off my arms or legs. You would never take my stem cells. You would never enucleate my cells or ova and try to put something into my cells, or try to take pieces of my cells and shove them into somebody else's cells. All of that is the equivalent of tearing out pages or cutting out the words from my books and putting it into someone else's books. That is a grotesquerie, a bad thing to do, completely ill-advised, and it ruins the library. Like, why do you not do that in the library? Because then you ruin the books for the next person who wants to come along. So the libraries are sacrosanct. Your own library and others' libraries, these are sacrosanct. That means that if you were ever to look at, read, or access something from yourself in another dimension or another organism, you are only allowed to access that information, to read it, learn from it respectfully, take a snapshot of it, but always leave the original in its pristine condition. All right? This is the beginning of the respectful reciprocity and living in community and not stealing from or harming another. So it's really important for you to comprehend and recognize that, because I tell you about like what it is like when you get to a higher dimensional state and how you can read and interpret other people. Like you become literate when you gain your higher faculties. You become literate and you can read another person like reading a book. You can, but you know, you can't just go around reading people like that's a violation. Until you're in a world that is cleansed and purified and there's no pathogenics and everybody here is positive and helpful and friend, until you're in that level of reality, like you can't just go around reading everybody. And even when you're in that type of a cleansed world where everybody is VIP in the VIP lounge, we still have propriety, which I've described in the past, the ethics of being in a telepathic world. It does not mean that every page of every book is open and on display for all people to read. So even in an elevated world, there are some parts of me that are for public display. And there are some parts of me that are only for friends. And there are some parts of me that are only for supreme confidants that I trust. And there are some parts of me that are only for me that I don't share with anyone else. And it's hugely presumptive for someone else to think that they could just come waltz right on in and read every page of my book. No, that would be considered very inappropriate and a violation. So even in a telepathic community or a genetically connected reciprocal community, it doesn't mean everything is open source. I get to read your personal diary. No, do not get to read my personal diary, but you do get to read everything that I put in my public facing files or publicly available information, not my rare books room. And that's very, very fair. Okay. So, because as I'm, here as a example of Lasagna, I want to make myself available to you, but that does not mean you get to read all of my diary, private stuff, hopes and dreams and traumas and things like that. And also like, what's my motivation? Let's talk a little bit now about my journey of being a flying rainbow lasagna. I'm the first, but not the only. Now, this is an important thing for you to comprehend and to recognize and internalize as part of my characteristics and personality structure. When I make something cool or find or discover something cool, I immediately want to share it with others. I'm like, this is so great. I can't wait to tell others about it. Very, very different than that movie, The Lord of the Rings, where one special ring bearer gets the chosen ring, and then he's like, the precious, I must keep the precious for myself. No, none for you. I'm a grotesque monster. Like you can't be that way. Can't be that way. But he was that way. Power abusing, grotesque creatures. So that's not who I am. And this is also part of why I'm Lasagna. I am Lasagna because I am correct. And the reason why grotesque power abusers are not lasagnas is because they are grotesque power abusers and they are not qualified to be the lasagna. So I'm the originator. I'm the first one, but I'm not only one. And that was a very intentional choice that I made in the moment of creating Flying Rainbow Lasagna. So I created Flying Rainbow Lasagna as Aurora, the higher dimensional presence that is actually a consciousness collective, the type of extraterrestrial that does not fly in a clank metal spaceship, but does things the old-fashioned way, all right? And I perceived the very great unfairnesses that were happening in your world, in your level of reality, from where I was in my level of reality outside of time and space in 2001. But of course, I live in a time that is outside of time and space. But it was when the person whose body I am presently in was being horribly killed by directed energy weapons, even though I didn't have that phrase to describe what was happening in that time, in a very, very unfair way. And I intervened because part of the way that she was being destroyed had to do with soul eradication technology. And this is a difficult education for you guys to have to embody because I'm teaching you about Flying Rainbow Lasagna, but that means you have to recognize the necessity of it, which comes out of huge levels of planetary trauma. And when I'm here as Flying Rainbow Lasagna, I'm teaching you the way to be consciousness freedom, pathway to consciousness freedom. Why am I here as Flying Rainbow Lasagna? Because the person who used to be in this body was being horribly murdered in a very traumatic way. So there's trauma at the basis of this educational story. And that can be challenging because like, you're like, I just want to learn how to be free and I want to learn how to do cool stuff. And I'm like, okay, but there's trauma at the basis of all of this. And then you have to process the truth of that trauma so that you can use these tools for freedom. All right. So just please know that that's a necessary recognition of the things that have gone on that created these things or created these circumstances. And we have to deal with the truth of that. You can't just take the good stuff, which is lasagna, which is admittedly very, very good stuff. What's good about lasagna is that it represents freedom, capacitation, perfection, beauty, truth, longevity, life, divine connection, paradise, perfect balance, pristine system. It represents really a lot of good stuff, but it comes out of a moment of like extreme torture and duress, and it comes out of a moment of profound unfairness, because what was happening in the soul eradication or erasure of the woman whose life I came into, if that had been fully erased, or if that thread had been fully cut from the time tapestry, the whole fabric of space-time would have fallen apart. And I, as Aurora in a higher dimensional reality, is like, if that life gets ended, that's it. You know, the fabric of space-time and consciousness is done. And I'm smiling right now to tell you this, but I was not smiling in that moment. I was really like, in a very, very serious way, seeing the multidimensional truth of reality. And I made a very, very serious and intentional choice to innovate the shape known as flying rainbow lasagna, create this higher dimensional pathway, and come into this body, even while I'm at the same time existing in a higher dimensional state. So, you know, I teach you about flying rainbow lasagna being a dynamic energy form. That's what my form is always doing, always oscillating and jumping back and forth as my consciousness viewpoint between who I am embedded in time here now in this body and who I am as Cheeky's barking, a presence on the stellar network that is largely not a part of linear time and is an ephemeral nature or ephemeral being. We might have to hug Cheeky for a moment or give her a bribe, but we're almost done with class. Okay. I made a very concerted choice in that moment. First, you might ask about the question. First, you might ask the question, rather, why lasagna? People often ask me this. So in the moment that I created Flying Rainbow Lasagna, I did not have a good Earth vocabulary or sense of Earth language and syntax. Literally, for me, Earth languages and English is like a second language. I am totally a foreigner and an outsider. And initially, I created the shape in a higher dimensional state in the moment of extreme duress in these battles. Just imagine like a crazy battle is going on. And I created this shape, and everything in the battle paused for one moment as everyone looked at it and was like, what is that? And I'm like, well, it's flying, because it was a flying shape, like hovering, rainbow, because it is these colors. And I was able to, you know, in my mind, come up with a thesaurus of common usages. And then I searched the thesaurus for the word that is the description for this shape. And the closest thing I could come up with is lasagna, because the edge of the lasagna is curly, like the edge of a piece of pasta that's in the lasagna that you know as you. That little up and down curly shape. So I called it a lasagna. And I did not know in the choice in that moment of calling this a flying rainbow lasagna that that is a weird sounding name at all. To me, that was totally normal. Like everybody stops in the interdimensional battle. What is that? I'm like, that's a flying rainbow lasagna. And then everybody crashes back together, back to chaos. And then I'm doing all sorts of things. You know, you can laugh about that, but it's just very truthful. I'm very literal. I am very literal. I'm not always literate. I am very literal, and especially with language, and remain so, and not very good with poetic allegory and interpretations of what words mean and what the multiple shadings of meaning that one word can have and how it's all put together. I'm not actually that good with that. So yeah, no, I'm totally outsider, and I had no idea of what it would sound like. I told people like, hi, I'm Aurora, I'm an otherworldly visitor, have a message for you. And the message is called Flying Rainbow Lasagna. Because people mostly, and especially in the beginning, were like, a what, a what, a what? Yeah, like what is this? And why are you saying this to me? And so I realized that it's been a little bit of a challenging name for some people to comprehend and to embrace, but it is not redeemable. Like you can't take it back. Can't pretend it away. I don't have words for it. It's indelible. That moment of creating it and that moment of naming it are indelible. And there's not a way to make a more palatable name that would be more popular or better in some way. And I don't like it when people tell me that I have to, because I'm also like, well, you know something? The Flying Rainbow Lasagna is my invention. It's my creation. It's why I get to name it. And that's my prerogative as an artist and a creator. Even if you find the name to be inconvenient, that's what I name it. And that's, you know, my pronouncement on everything. So I hope that you will respect that, because although I come with this as a gift or an offering to people, so that way you can find greater levels of freedom, find a pathway to freedom, you're not required in any way. Like, I offer it to you, but I do not require it from you. It's totally your free will choice. Like, you can do lasagna, you can become a part of this higher dimensional reality. You can learn to create these giant wings in time and become a multidimensional presence, or not. I am really okay with that. Either way, I want you to know I am Flying Rainbow Lasagna. I'm Flying Rainbow Lasagna. I'm doing my thing. I'm doing my thing with or without you, with or without your support, or with or without your recognition. And none of that is meant to be combative or confrontational. It is meant to be an affirmation of who I am and of the potentials that exist within the lasagna. Because once you start to really explore what lasagna is as a reality creation tool and as a way to fix and ameliorate problems that have been going on in reality for a long amount of time, then you will come to see, you're like, well, of course, like, when you can lasagna, you don't need anyone else's permission. You don't need anyone else's celebration. You don't need anyone else to like give you something or make something for you. Like, you can literally make and manifest and create whatever you need to. So my motivations are not that I want to get something from you. I literally am here to give something to you. So some of the funny Aurora stories are when I first came into this world and I first created like a sculptural form to represent this abstract concept. And I would go to people without very good language skills in that time in my development. I wasn't very good with my words. And I would just be like, here's lasagna. And they would be like, what is this thing that people thought, like, is this a scented candle? Like, is it a lampshade? I'm like, no, it's a lasagna. And I thought it would be really quite intuitively obvious what it was and its value. And people didn't get it. And then after that, kind of had to go home and recalibrate. Be like, okay, like, I made the lasagna. I gave it as a gift to humanity. Like, what more do you want from me? And I realized it wasn't enough, because humans here in this time and place cannot simply comprehend what this is by looking at it. I realized that I had to find a way to articulate it, to tell you about it with words, and to tell you why and how this is important, and also how you can do it. Because that was the first thing that I did was, okay, like, they're not getting it by just looking. So I'm going to have to figure out how to talk about things. That was its own difficulty. I mean, really, like, mastering language is so hard. So I had to learn a whole series of vocabulary words to be able to try to talk to you about this concept. And that took me many years. And even when I did that, it wasn't enough, because by that point, it's like, 2011 or so, and I had been to a couple of math conferences, and I had learned the word harmonics and some of these other words like polygon and, force field and different things like that. But it still wasn't enough, because when I started to teach my curriculum, I created this class and I created this curriculum. And so that's like 2012 or 2013. And people would be like, oh, well, this sounds fascinating, Aurora. Like, when are you going to show us the dance? And that I was very intimidated to actually show people the dance because to me it is a very private experience. Like again, my dance and the lasagna and the things that I do were not ever really motivated by like the support or celebration or approval of other people. Just imagine something that you just do. It might be hard. Maybe you can't even imagine it, but I would just describe my own motivations. Like it is something that I just do and embody because it's who I am. It doesn't matter if someone doesn't clap for me. It doesn't matter if someone knows that I do it. I'm very happy to share it with people, but I don't need people to know that I'm doing it in order to get motivated to do it. I mean, that might be really hard to comprehend because most of the dances of this time and place are motivated by appearance. Like if you're a ballet dancer, you're trying to dance like as a decorative object and twirl around and look nice for the audience. And if you're at the discotheque, you're trying to dance so that that way you'll be attractive to the opposite sex. They will want to have babies with you, right? But my dance is really not motivated by being a decoration or being a sex object. It is really motivated by the freedom, the feeling of being like a wild horse running on a beautiful open plain with the wind blowing through your hair and how the way that horse moves in just a beautiful poetic truth of what it is to be alive. That is what my dance is like. So it's something that I do every day, if possible, every day that I'm well and healthy, and every day, of course, that my daily schedule allows it, because sometimes I've had crazy, very scheduled times when I wasn't able to do it effectively. But it's a very private or individualistic thing that I do, but it's just an expression of my soul and who I am. So when I first started to teach this class, I never really considered like, oh, you're going to have to show people what this is. I thought I could just tell you like, oh, I have this new tool. Here's what it is. Here's your intellect recipe and go do it. I'm going to give you the tools, but I'm not actually going to show you what I do with my paintbrush. And I thought that was enough. And after many years, and as humans devolved and got into worse and worse situations with all the challenges on your planet, I realized I had to show people that it wasn't enough for me just to give you the recipe and make my lasagna in private. And so I started to do sharing online in let's say 2018 or so. And I had just a very small group of trusted people because I'm still very selective about how I do the dance and who I share it with because it's a special dance. And so back then I had to trust people and gather on, the video conference software, and I would dance in my garage and show people how I do what I do. And I'm still selective about who I dance with. It's invitation only. And I also made a choice not to commodify my dance. I have no problems with sacred commerce. I have no problems with people making things that you love to make. Like I love to make my clothing. I love to sell beautiful clothing. I love to make my artwork. I love to sell, originals or, make music and sell my music. But my lasagna dance, it is not for sale. So although I really appreciate it when people support my work, and I make a lot of opportunities, like if you want to support my work, to buy a dress or buy my music or whatever, but my dance is not for sale. And that's something that I have stayed strong with. And so I've had to structure things in a unique way because the Native Americans of North America, so the indigenous people, they are very much about dancing, and I relate to that very much. And there are some dances that they only do for their community. There are some dances that they would never do for an outsider. They would only do it for their lovers, mom, dad, or, immediate family. And I think that that is very fair, very good, and very righteous. And I feel the same way. Like my lasagna dance is a very, very special dance. And it's not like the, Tchaikovsky's ballet or Swan Lake or something like that. It's got a lot of meaning and a lot of specialness to it. And it's not something that I feel comfortable charging money for because it is something that is done out of profound love and generosity. But I have no problem with people like charging money for what they add to the world. Like, I want you to know I'm not judgmental about that. But this for me is something special and unique. So that's why I keep my Tuesday dance group as invite only. And there's no fee for people to be on there. But also, I don't put it on YouTube because there are so many dance videos and things that are very disrespectful and very sexually objectifying that I don't want to be in that world. And my dance is also not a regular dance because a lot of dance is about like making sure that you look right. And dancers, I love you. I hope that you can get past any type of dance trauma that you had if you ever had some kind of a dance teacher that was like too fat, like stomach sticking out. I'm thinking some like Russian ballet teacher or whatever, like a lot of professional dancers have this where they're so worried, like they're like, I can't dance today, like my stomach is sticking out. I'm like, oh no, like no, this is not what this dance is like. So I want everybody to feel good about their bodies and feel happy and fit, but also please know that you don't have to compare your body to yourself or other people or an ideal image in a magazine or a yoga magazine or Instagram or something like that. Like, you dance as the body that you are right now. And you do get healthier and more fit by doing the Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance. It's a physical, actual dance, but it's not something where you have to be worried about your appearance and how you're looking. What you should worry about when you're doing lasagna is how you are feeling. What you should do is focus. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a physical dance. And how you do it, I already mentioned, you have to optimize your schedule so that you can get into the lasagna mind state, because the lasagna mind state is not a mundane mind state. It is an exalted or magical or extra dimensional mind state where you activate your higher faculties and fly through time. So although I dance right here, sometimes I dance outside with my headphones on, but I also dance right here, like on my gym mat, because a lot of it is floor work where we are rolling around and rolling through portals. Sorry if I lost my train of thought there a little bit. When I do the dance, I just start off, turn on the light switch and do the dance. Like, you have to get into the feeling. You have to get into the feeling of it. Another big part of the dance is that it is synchronized to cosmic presences. So sometimes you get the inner directive. You're like, I have to dance right now. Like, sometimes I hear a song and I'm like, that's it. Drop everything and dance, because that is the moment. And even if I have to be like, well, I'm in the middle of writing an email or whatever, like I have to respond to this text or whatever. I'm like, no, F all of that. Now is the moment to dance. I want you to be that way. Be that strong in your boundaries. Dance when the moment is right. And don't worry or be self-conscious about how others perceive you or perceive your dance. Hilarious stories about times and places where I have danced where other people have been like, I'm shocked and appalled. What are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm dancing. I'm dancing. Including here at my apartment complex where I presently live. And I used to joke, I'm like, you're dancing, like you're not hurting anybody. They can't arrest you for dancing, but I never want anybody to get arrested. So how do you do the dance? You have to get into a lasagna mind state. You have to get accelerated on an inner metabolic level. And that has to do with how light is flowing through your body. So you consider your metabolism as how fast are you digesting your food. Your metabolism and glucose is a part of how fast your light metabolism is, but it is also how fast your cognitive awareness can comprehend something. So I've spoken about how the chakras of the body are similar to a zoetrope or early prototypical animations, where the flashing of static images in a rhythmic pattern gives you the optical illusion that a drawing is actually moving. So it is the same thing where you have to accelerate your inner movie projector, get your chakras moving faster on a higher dimensional level, so that way you can make the leap into the next highest dimension. The leap into lasagna from this toroid shape into the hypertorus of lasagna. It is a energy event, DNA event, cognitive event, and it's a magical event. And it's very hard to do it on command. And it's very hard to do it when you're not optimized. So non-optimized can mean maybe you're feeling sad and depressed. Maybe you haven't eaten enough food. Maybe you're constipated. Maybe you're worried and anticipating something bad happening. Maybe you didn't get a chance to stretch out your legs and your tendons and your muscles are tired. It can be like so many different things. You have to be optimized in every area of your life in order to lasagna. Like there's not a way to be like, oh, like my life is falling apart, everything is so bad. Like, but my lasagna is fine. Like it is the litmus test or representative of all of the things that are going on in your life. And if things aren't going well in your life, you dance the flying rainbow lasagna in order to improve things. So if things are not optimized in your health or your finances, it doesn't mean you're like, well, you know something, what I should do is get out there and get a job. And then after I have plenty of money, then I'll come home and I'll dance my flying rainbow lasagna. Like, no, that's not what you should do. If your finances are not optimized, you should make some time every day to dance the lasagna, because what you are doing is creating new potentials in time. When you heal your body by dancing the lasagna, what you're doing is creating new potentials in time, where you take, like, you're like, okay, my body used to be shaped like this. Then I danced the lasagna and I created a new timeline where my body becomes shaped like this, the way it's supposed to be. And then there might even be a connecting integument between malformed body and perfect body, days, weeks, months, or years that might have to go on in order for you to achieve that perfect state, but you get to that perfect state. And I'm a good example of that. Body house was very badly damaged when I first got into it, but I've been lasagnaing for over like 20 years. At this point, it's like 24 years. And I've been able to fix up and heal the parts that needed to be fixed, and then even build new stuff that are new lasagna augmentations that had nothing at all to do with the original owner. I've completely customized this body to myself, and I have also customized this life to myself. So my body and my protein forms are unique to me, but also like the artwork that I make is unique to me. This class that I teach is unique to me. The music that I make is unique to me. These are all lasagna activities. So when you dance the lasagna, what you do is you roll around on the floor, all right, but you have to put on great music, and you have to comprehend that you are going into a higher dimensional state that's similar to surfing on the ocean, and you kind of have to get with the ocean currents. And then when you're with the ocean currents, you'll feel time waves coming through your body. And this is part of the psychic gift of kinesthetic senses. So people comprehend what is clairvoyance when you can see with your higher senses, paint a painting. Clairaudience when you hear with your higher senses. But the body intelligence is when you feel with your higher senses. And that's when I can feel the waves of energy that are starting to come up and around and through me. And this is why it is being a dancer, because I literally can feel energy is coming up my spine. I'm connecting to one of these complex patterns in time. It's going to flow through me and up and over my head, and I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to dive into a perfect vortex, spin around, and then come out the other side. That's called going through a portal. So when you do the flying rainbow lasagna, what you're doing is dancing with your DNA in these 4 vortex motions, but you're also dancing with your mind and navigating the complex multidimensional realities with your mind. You're also sending your time tendril through higher dimensional time mechanics into various different time places that you're touching on in different organisms or levels of self. And you're also propelling yourself through time. And you're also creating potentials for the future where others did not exist. That's like if you see everything on the menu of time, you don't like any of the recipes, you're like, I'm going to write something new because I don't like any of these possibilities. And After you do all of those dances in your time mechanics, then you reintegrate with time, but you come back into an updated reality. So you kind of go out of reality, fly around in a quantum indeterminate space, make a bunch of cool things happen in the abstract level of self beyond your intellect, and then you reconnect with your body and reconnect with your intellect. And then you have to be kind of like, okay, like what changed? What's new? And then you have fun going around and looking around and being like, okay, what changed and what's new? And then you internalize that and you recognize, well, okay, some parts of my reality I have improved. Some parts are still a work in progress. And then you dance again, maybe the next day. And you're like, okay, now that I'm going to do this dance today, I'm going to make these other parts that need to get better, get better. And you do this incrementally in exactly the same way that an oil painter does layers and layers of glazes to create the image that they're creating. So we're in art class now. Class, pick up your paint brushes. We're going to begin this class today with traditional oil painting techniques. So you find yourselves at your easel in front of a blank canvas. The first thing is you're going to do an underpainting. So please choose a neutral color and just do a generalized composition of where things are going to be on your canvas. So maybe you're going to have, some flowers over here and a person's face over here. And here's where you're going to put a picture of a kitty cat. Okay, now that you've done your quick little underpainting, let it dry. Come back tomorrow. Do it. Good morning, class. Welcome back to art class. Now that your underpainting has dried, now let's start to block in some general light and shadows. So now I want you to squint your eyes and see, like, where is it bright in the painting? Oh, it's bright over here at the window. Okay, so put some white over there. And then it's dark over here in the shadow. Okay, so put some darkness over there. And now goodbye today because class is over. Do it. Welcome back to class, everyone. It's time for the next layer of painting on your painting as we bring the general to the specific. So now that you've got your composition, your general lights and darks in there, I want you to mix up very, very clear glaze of just a little bit of blue and start to paint some underlayers blue. Okay, you painted some things blue today. Now let it dry and come back in a week. And you come back in a week and you're like, okay, now I want you to paint a thin layer of green and put some thin green over here. Come back in a week, then a thin layer of red, put these parts over here. And as you add these subsequent thin glazes of paint on top of each other, the painting starts to create a form. And then now imagine like 5 months have gone by, you're painting every other week or so, and all of a sudden the painting is starting to have a life. Like you can see, like, well, there's a window over here, and then there's a person's face over here, and then there's flowers over here, and then there's the cat over here. And as you make more and more layers, get more detail, the skin actually looks like skin color. And then at the very, very end of the painting, you're like, okay, today's the last day. You're putting the finishing touches on your painting. I want you to put like that little eyebrow on the face and put the whiskers on the cat. And now put these little dewdrops on your flowers, bouquet. And now your painting is done. All right. So this is very much how we do flying regular lasagna. You begin your dance. A generalized desire, a generalized wish, but it's something that you feel passionately about. It could be about your own health or your own life or something in your community that you want to improve and make more beautiful, more positive in your life. And when you do your dance, you're adding just most rough sketch of how it would look like if things were better. So one example is a friend of mine who wants to move to a better place to live. And she's like, I don't know exactly where I want it to be, but I know I want to, whatever, have a bathtub. I'm just using weird examples. And so that's just the first thing, lights and darks. I want a bathtub. And then you go in again, dance again the next day. And you're like, yeah, you know what? I also want to have a really nice stove because I like to cook soup. I'm making things up now. So put that in. And then next time you dance, you're like, yeah, and in my apartment, I also want to have like a balcony where I can grow geraniums. And you keep on putting additional details, additional things about what it feels like to be there. And then at the very end, like, you've danced for many, many weeks. And you're like, yeah, and I want to have like a tiny little plaque that says, bless this mess. And that's going to be on the doorway. And then the important things that you engage in life. You don't just do this dance in an abstract sense. You get out there every day and you engage in life. So after you do your dance and you return into yourself and you bring everything to a pagination or a page break. It's like doing your paperwork. Like you complete all files, dot every I, cross every T, collate all of your paperwork, and then bring everything to a completion. Then you experience what you created for that day. And every layer of augmentation or improvement on reality you put on there brings you closer to your envisionment. And you start to feel really happy and empowered because you're like, oh, I was so intimidated because I wanted to find a new place to live and I didn't know how this would work. And then I danced the lasagna and I went out there and I either saw a notice at the cafe that said apartment available, or talked to someone who said, I'm looking for a roommate, or drove past a sign of a house that looked nice with a thing on the front door that says, live here, roommate wanted. And then you followed through on it. So big understanding is that Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a dance in the level of abstraction, abstract connection to reality. And then we're still in the world. We still reintegrate with the world and have the experience of the potentials that we create in reality. And then we continue to fine tune those potentials with continued dance. Ideally, you dance for your whole life, like you're in an adventure that never ends. But please know that, if you're in distress right now, you should dance. That is the most sane thing to do in personal or planetary or social distress. But also, things won't always be like difficult and crappy with lots of messes to clean up. Like you won't always be using the Flying Rainbow Lasagna as some kind of crisis management tool or a bucket with a mop so you can mop up all the messes in your life. We have to do that right now because it's been a very difficult journey. But at a certain point, the Flying Rainbow Lasagna becomes your vehicle, your art, materials, your paintbrush for creating reality in a very, very joyful and empowered way. So at a certain point, you get out of the underdog mentality where you're like, oh, I just gotta, dance, fancy footwork to make some things happen. Like I've shared with you some stories about people who are in either extreme medical crisis or about to be in a car accident. And then lasagna, I came out the other side and they were okay. It is that. But that's like Flying Rainbow Lasagna as crisis management tool. Like in case of emergency, break glass and dance lasagna. Yes, it is that. But also you can lasagna when it's not an emergency. And I would like for you to embody it as that type of joyous, artistic self-expression. And what fuels the lasagna is both sunlight and carbohydrates. So for many years, I was a very low carb person. I'm not fully ketogenic, but that helped me to control epileptic seizures, right? So I didn't eat a lot of sugar, definitely not like bread and pasta or cakes and cookies and things like that. But before I do my Flying Rainbow Lasagna dance, like that's when I will eat some fruit, have some fruit juice or whatever, like, have my carbohydrates, because you're going to want to have freely available, like glucose in your blood. So that way you can do stuff. It's like running a marathon. Like it's a lot easier if you eat some oranges or, a banana, and then you've got energy to be able to get going. Do a little something. So I don't dance on an empty stomach. I usually dance in the morning. I wake up in the morning, I have some decaf coffee, have a little muffin, a little almond bread toast, a little something. Because you don't want to have a giant meal, because my dance does involve a lot of rolling through portals. And if you have a giant, whatever meatball sub, then your body is like not in any condition to do any kind of inversions or acrobatics or flips or twirls or anything like that. Okay. So first you eat a little light, and I mean a few carbs, but also you got to do sun gazing. So every time before I do my Flying Rainbow Lasagna, I connect with the sun and I eat the sun, and I get the light and the inspiration and the energy to jump into a higher dimensional reality. And what I also do, I've talked to you about the Merkaba, and that was last week's lesson and also a little bit before that. Before I do Flying Rainbow Lasagna, and I encourage everyone to do this, put a protective force field around your lasagna activities. So Flying Rainbow Lasagna is like going swimming in the ocean of consciousness. And you do want to make sure that you put on some sharp repellent so that way you are protecting yourself from evil, destructive things that want to eat you, that you don't want to encounter. And you also want to protect your creations. Like, we're here in art class, making your oil painting. And you're like, okay, great. I put my layers on for right now. Now I just have to let it dry. So you put your paintbrush down, and then you got to lock your art studio because you want to make sure that no one's going to come in after everyone goes home and be like, oh, nice painting here. Well, how about if I smoosh this part and then smoosh this part and then put my elbow into this part? And then you come back and you're like, who smooshed my whole masterpiece? All right. So you put the Merkaba up around your flying rainbow lasagna creation activities so that no one hijacks your creation. Pardon me. Your creation is sacred. Your time is sacrosanct. You want to make sure that no one comes along and hijacks or misappropriates the energy that you have put into reality creation. And you also want to protect yourself from blowback, accidents, mistakes, and unintended consequences. And that would be the equivalent of like dripping paint on something that you didn't want to get paint on, like on your dress or on the floor or whatever. Put up the Merkaba to protect yourself from all of those eventualities. I already mentioned that it's incremental. So the first time you do your dance, like you can expect reality to change and shift. I have these really annoying flies here, but it's not the end of the journey. So it's not something where you can expect to spontaneously lasagna one time and then all of a sudden, like snap your fingers. That's it. Everything is done. Birth of a new reality. Like we're done, folks. Everybody go home. No. What you can expect the first time you dance the lasagna is to experience initial and incremental improvements in your own life, your own comprehension, your own reality structure, and your own capacitation, and then to build on those. And I am joyful because I'm, working on my masterpiece for like 24 years, but I'm not done with my masterpiece. I am so joyful for that. I'm like, yeah, like my painting is looking very beautiful, but there's still many, many more years left to paint on this painting. Many, many more beautiful things that are still to occur or come forward in the imagery here. And I would like for you to feel the same thing. Many people have a sense of spiritual or soul ennui. You're over it. So over it. Very bored. Gone through a lot of cycles of the karmic washing machine, been folded, spindled, and mutilated, and not having that much fun here as a soul. I totally understand. And I'm still walking and I'm like, hooray, like I get to do cool stuff. Like even like doing my laundry, I'm like, this is interesting. Look, like you put the quarters in here and then it makes the thing happen. Like I'm still interested and, engaged in life. Just everything is an adventure to me because I'm not, I haven't been here that many times or as long as many of you have. Hold on, Lola, I'm going to open the door for Jen. She might need to go outside and she definitely needs medicine. Hold on. Okay, just open the door for my little dog to go outside. No, you have to work incrementally and recognize that very joyfully, like your expression will grow with all the different layers that you put on it. And it's really an eternal dance. Like you should be very joyful about that. Like when I talk about the eternal journey between two finite boundaries, like two perfect mirrors that are held in parallel like this, and a beam of light that transits between the two mirrors. I think that can go on for forever. That's very positive. So it doesn't seem positive because some of you are like, life is a trap. I'm trapped in matter. I'm gnostically suppressed. I'm making like lighthearted fun of the viewpoint. But I'm like, no, you're not victimized. Life is a gift. And things have been crappy up until now, but now things get to be better. All right. So Flying Rainbow Lasagna as a very real tool for transforming and uplifting your moment-to-moment reality so that you don't feel like life is a horrific burden, you don't feel existential ennui, and you don't, key point, have to keep going in negative time cycles. That's breaking ancestral negative time cycles, personal negative time cycles, planetary negative time cycles. And a big part of what I'm doing here as Lasagna is giving you guys the solution to how you resolve all the negative things that happened in Atlantis or are about to happen in Atlantis. So you can also think of Flying Rainbow Lasagna and myself as a seed crystal that is dropped into the supersaturated solution of your consciousness. If you have ever made sugar cookies or sugar work with patisserie, you make a super saturated sugar syrup on the stove. It looks like water, but that's because it is fully dissolved and full of sugar. And then it just takes one tiny crystal to drop into that super saturated solution that then causes the crystallization process to start to happen around that initial seed crystal. And outward from that epicenter, all of these crystallizing structures happen. That is who and what I am as Flying Rainbow Lasagna. I'm the initiatory lasagna. I'm the originator. I'm not the end lasagna in any way. I bring it to you so that way you can embody it, apply it to your own life, hopefully learn from me as a mentor and customize it to your own journey. The reason why I came here into physical being, as opposed to just giving the lasagna as an abstract concept to the world and then being like, goodbye forever, I'm flying off now. It's because I recognized if I just threw this like a concept into the world, somebody would figure it out. And it might take thousands of years. I realized it might literally take 5 or 10,000 years once the lasagna is initiated for people to figure it out, get an inspiration, make it as art or music, express it to other people, and then have it be actually used as the tool for consciousness and genetic freedom that it can be. And I realized that that would be an enormous amount of misery and extended crappiness for all of you. And I was like, well, instead of making them all experience more extended crappiness and misery, like I'm going to go down there and just tell them about it. And we're going to short circuit a lot of this crappiness. And also I was like, you know what? Like, because I want to tell people about the lasagna. I was also like this, like, I don't want to just be like, here's a great idea, everyone. Someone else tell everyone all about it. Like, here's a great idea, everyone. I literally came here to tell you all about it. That's me. All right. And if you want to know what type of an ego I have and why I'm here in the world of egos, it's because of that. And it's a good thing. I'm like, I'm not just going to take this incredibly valuable new innovation and just toss it over my shoulder, be like, lasagna, like figure it out. Here's the recipe, make one yourself, and then go off on my own, like, self-satisfying ways. I'm like, no, I want to go down there and tell them like, this is a treasure. Like I come with gifts, something really important for you guys. Here it is. And then so to share with you my genesis, it wasn't enough for me just to say like, I come with treasure, here it is. And it wasn't enough for me to just make a sculpture or visual representation of it. People didn't get it. And then it literally wasn't enough for me to create a whole curriculum and to teach things in incremental, manageable, cumulative blocks the way they do at schools or, formal education. That wasn't enough either. Then I also had to start to demonstrate it to you. And that's what I started to do, 2018, 2019 or so. And I still do that now. That's why. So the lasagna movement that we're in right now is Lasagna Movement 13. And I actually restarted my online group in like 2021 or so. So every movement is about 3 months long. Like we go from the solstice to the equinox. And we just started the one that was in June 21st, and now we're finishing up on September 21st, and that's just in a couple of days. And that's that chapter. And we dance that chapter, and then we finish that chapter, and what we do is bring it to a completion. This is the page break. It is my hand vortexes coming together in the end of one movement that comes together, culminates, kachunkas, or blocks into itself, and then releases into the next thing. And the end of one thing becomes the beginning of the next thing. And then you keep going. And this is the beautiful freedom of this oscillation or eternal journey that we can be on. It's not meant to be an imprisonment, a burden, an obligation, not in any way. Flying Rainbow Lasagna is meant to be an opportunity for you to go into higher dimensions, rearrange your DNA, reclaim who you were always meant to be restored to your original divine settings, to manufacture or to create or to construct as if from the first time who you would like to be or what you would like to experience, and to continue moving through time in optimum patterns. And also, the lasagna is very much like my otherworldly vehicle or way of moving or being propelled through time. So in that sense, I call it like, like a vehicle, like a space vehicle. The key points are that you cannot rape your way on board. And I say this a lot, and I've always said it, and I continue to say this in light of the very naughty and evil presences that are in your world that have tried to hack or gain unauthorized access to what lasagna is, what my DNA is, and what these states of being and reality creation are. You cannot rape your way on board. That means you cannot access it non-consensually. The evil ones of your world are used to getting whatever they want non-consensually. It doesn't matter if you say no or no thank you. They're like, I'm going to take it anyway or get in you anyway. None of that is acceptable, and none of that works with lasagna. It's the ultimate. So there's very many intentionally created, inherent protective firewalls or fail-safes to make sure that this is not just another thing that gets hijacked and misused, like DNA. So you can't just take lasagna and use it for evil. In fact, when evil people get lasagna and they get exposed to lasagna, all it does is send them to entropy faster. And this is a big, important thing. So in DNA, there is a combo of life-affirming characteristics that you want to energize and send to energy. Keep going. Make that keep going. Make that song keep going. But there are some characteristics that are not life-affirming. They will kill and destroy and mutilate you. And you want to turn down the volume on those characteristics and stop those scrolls from being read and manifested from your DNA. And the ones who are evil in the world are evil because of what is written in their DNA scrolls. When they get access to Flying Rainbow Lasagna, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden they're going to start making evil things happen in the world. Like, oh, great, now we've got a giant amplified microphone, like I can sing evil even louder, evil crappy songs and bad music even louder. No. When they get exposed to lasagna, it puts them face to face with the undeniable existential truth that they don't exist, that their evil is a series of erroneous patterns that they have been embodying or expressing, and that when they turn down the volume on everything that is evil and non-eternal in themselves, they turn down the volume on 100% of their music. If you're evil, it means that you're 100% erroneous characteristics with 0% of positive things that should be alive and move forward through time. So the evil ones, when they hear my Flying Rainbow Lasagna music, they're like, oh, what's that terrible music? Because all it does is tell me, the evil one, how much I don't exist. And the more that they hear lasagna music, the more that they're like, oh, I don't exist, I don't exist, I don't exist, I don't exist, I don't exist. They get out of existence. And the more of you that do this dance, especially in your own bodies, turning down the volume on ancestral or cultural residues of consciousness that don't exist, but that might be trying to manifest through you, that is how our world gets better. And those things that you turn down the volume on, some of those are turn down the volume on the concept of death or on the necessity of death. Turn down the volume on any type of death cult, which is worshiping of the necessity of death or those who have died. Turn down the volume on the sense of martyrdom, the idea that you must die to be a good person or to achieve some kind of paradise state in an afterlife. Turning down the volume on any sense of violation, which means non-consensual activity or crossing of boundaries of others or, non-respective boundaries. Turning down the volume on certain levels of self-destruction. But when something is evil, it has self-destruction because it knows it shouldn't exist. So those of you who exist must turn down the volume on erroneous self-destruction that wants you to stop existing. So you're resolving the self-conflict. Sorry, I got distracted from a bunch of things because Cheeky's barking outside. Hold on, let me bring Cheeky inside and then I'll just complete our class. Hold on 1 second. Thank you, everybody. Apologies for that. A brief interlude. Had to make sure Cheeky came inside and then she got her cookies. Turning down the volume on certain characteristics that are basically, I would put them in the category of pathogenic, things that are psychopathological or disease causing. Those are the things that you don't want in your body. So clearly some things are genetic diseases and some things are bad thoughts that basically are thought structures that cause death. So moving away from and turning down the volume on any thought structures that cause death or that indoctrinate you into presuming the necessity of death, or I mentioned martyrdom, the elevation and admiration of those who have died. All of those things to turn down the volume on. And some of that stuff is religious stuff. Like these are all cultural projections and things that are put on top of you that are not life affirming, that you do not want to continue forward. And with Flying Rainbow Lasagna, what you're really doing is making a very, very concerted effort about what characteristics you wish to embody and what characteristics you do not wish to embody. Like literally, you are the artist of your reality. You're painting who you are as a person, as a set of characteristics, as a soul. And you're making very conscious color choices about what you wish to look like and what you wish to have in reality. So Flying Rainbow Lasagna, I think, is like something worthy of celebrating because it brings you as humans and really all life, because Flying Rainbow Lasagna is available to, I wanted to say this, like to my little dog, 2 cats, 2 squirrels, all able to get into greater levels of empowerment. So like, what does it look like when an animal is Flying Rainbow Lasagna? My dog is very lasagna. So I'm affecting many people in life here as I do my lasagna dance. I'll get to all of your wonderful questions and comments in a moment and we'll say goodbye. But I've had my dog for like over 9 years at this point. And she is very affected by my DNA. And also, like, we drink out of the same water bottle. Like, my microbes go into her. She definitely has got saliva inside of her mouth. Like, she's gotten influenced by me and my lasagna. And I feel like this has made her, dogs are wonderful in general, but some of them are like fun doofus dogs. Like, they're just silly. They roll in the mud and they do all sorts of stuff like that. But Cheeky is really evolved. And she is more than the dog that she was when I first adopted her. She had a lot of potential when I adopted her as that little dog, but what she's evolved into is comprehending human language a lot more, comprehending human social dynamics a lot more, being attentive to human emotional needs. Like now she understands what I'm saying, understands what's happening when we like go around town or go to a store or go to a social situation. And the key point is she wants to give in some generous nature. Like if she sees someone that has a cane or a walker, she goes over to them and she's like, hi, like, hug me. Like, I'll make you feel better. Or, this is a good cheeky story. Years ago, we lived across town and we had neighbors that were like right next door, we shared the same driveway, and they had little boys who were 3 years old and 5 years old. And one time the little boy was outside with he wasn't even outside. He was inside with his dad. Their front door was open and their mom was on a business trip or whatever. And the little 3-year-old boy was crying so much because he missed his mom. That was it. It's just like 3-year-old crying in tantrum because he missed his mom. But my dog and I were outside in the driveway and my dog heard that little boy crying and she invited herself inside of the neighbor's house. They knew us, so it was okay. But she invited herself on in and I saw this. She sat herself right down next to the kid who was crying and she just sat down next to him, looked up at him, and was kind of like, everything except like putting the hand on. She was like, just hug me. You'll feel better. I can hear that you're upset. Like, that's an amazing thing for an animal to do. Like, she my dog understood that this little kid was in distress. She felt his feelings. She went over to minister to him and attend to him. That is pretty amazing. Cognitively, emotionally, socially, present, and in how she responded to that. That's just one example of her lasagna activities. Chiki's also a master manifester. So she's very trying to help other people. And so because she's, learned and grown so much and evolved, she's not just like, like a regular silly dog, but also she uses her powers of lasagna manifestation to manifest foods that are not dog food, that she eats like, so I have health food in the house. Like I do not have like egg rolls and tacos and pizza, everything like that. But we walk around town, my dog is always like sniffing and she's like, oh, like I wish I could have that. I wish I could have that. So like one triumph for her was we were walking past the Chinese food restaurant where she always sniffs, like wishing she could have it. And she found an entire egg roll right there on the sidewalk. And before I could even stop her from doing it, she just like scarfed up the whole thing and chomped it away. So that was, an amazing miracle for her that she got to eat those flavors. She totally manifested that egg roll for herself. And she's done that with pizza crusts, pieces of pepperoni, French fries. Like these are all the things we don't have in the house that she is obsessed with. And she manages somehow to manifest them for herself, like in the most perfect little places, like, like whatever, like here's a breaded chicken nugget, like right on the sidewalk, right next to where we're walking. Like she just has amazing manifestation skills. So, okay, I know I'm getting very silly, but lasagna is an activity that is available to more than just human beings. And really, our whole entire planet is in the process of becoming flying rainbow lasagna. And I know you can see the lighting isn't always that perfect, but that's what that part of that painting is about. It is about our whole entire planetary structure moving into the higher dimensional, fully healed and empowered state that is flying rainbow lasagna. So, of course, I could keep on talking about flying rainbow lasagna for a very long amount of time. I don't know if I did enough here today, but we'll keep going. This semester isn't over. We'll return to this. Okay, so let me go. I'm scrolling, and I know I make the silliest faces. Apologies. Okay, yeah. Okay, so back here, Kim Rose, and thank you to everyone who's here during the recording and to people who ask wonderful questions. We appreciate your minds. Kim Rose says, what do you say about there being a population of super soldiers who have received DNA modifications as children and then are put through military training that activates the designer DNA, also known as members of the secret space programs? Okay, I want you to know, like, strap yourselves in for a rant. I'm pushing up my non-existent sleeves because I am gonna rant now. So people think that the secret space program and super soldiers are your friends. They're not your friends. A lot of these guys and girls have been genetically modified and are literally fictionally running the directed energy weapons that fry the brains of natural Christs like you and me. Okay? So there's a lot of cachet in the world of the UFO conferences and the world of New Age blah, blah sharing, where people are like, I'm a super soldier, I'm a this, I'm a that. And they think that it's a positive thing. And when I hear people say that they think that they're a super soldier, I'm like, oh, I do not trust this person. Forgive me if you identify as a super soldier, but here's why. A lot of super soldiers are exploited, folded, spindled, mutilated, genetically modified, mentally partitioned, MK Ultra'd, and weaponized in various different ways, and then used to attack me. Not very nice, secret space program. So not only are the super soldiers and the secret space program fictionally using directed energy weapons that might be from satellites and other towers and apparatuses, because I have been fried by them from satellites, but also from Navy ships that were offshore, especially when I lived in San Diego. The Navy ships would be parked like right off the coast, and they had giant like radar dishes that they were beaming at me. And so the secret space program is not your friend if you're like me and you're a flying rainbow lasagna freedom fighter. They have, I'm sorry, I'm having even difficulty organizing my thoughts here. So they have a lot of propaganda. They have groomed you, possibly through some of these YouTube sharings and UFO conferences, to think that they are something to look up to. They are nothing to look up to. They are not good or ethical soldiers at all. They are very much working for evil aliens to try to kill and hurt me. I am what you would call a good alien, although I'm not really an alien, but I am certainly a supernatural light being. And they, super soldiers and SSP, exist pretty much to eradicate me and go against my agenda. So I'll say this. It is totally truthful that some proportion of the population has been genetically modified and used and exploited in these programs. Sometimes it is consensual and people are like, hooray, I think I'd like to be a super soldier. Sign me up. And sometimes it's not consensual and people are sold into it by part of their affiliation with their family, which might be one of these bloodline lineage families, or some other form of conscription, like not willing participation in a military organization. But the indoctrination and the mental partitioning, once you become a part of that organization, is profound. And people sometimes are consciously aware of the harm that they are doing to me. Sometimes they are merely subconsciously aware of it, but they are still nonetheless harming me. And they're also harming Christ. Like they're fighting against Christ. They're fighting against the good guys. So here's the basic litmus test. You're using technology. You're pretty much not a good guy. If you're working for one of these space races that uses technology and has gifted whatever, the United States government or the Five Eyes security apparatus or Israel, extraterrestrial surveillance or directed energy weapon, consciousness reduction, fictional hardware, like that's not good. That's not your friend. That's Antichrist. These are mostly augmented antichrists. Very, very dangerous people. Okay. Mary Ellen says, how does that happen? If one person leaves Earth, why would it collapse? Oh, what was the question about? I'm sorry if I don't remember what exactly that was from, but please reiterate what that was in question to. Kimro says, I think the words flying rainbow lasagna were divinely inspired. So you teaching would evade the censorship and would otherwise trigger in the algorithm. I think so too. I do think that there was a necessity of me calling this flying rainbow lasagna, and that I don't know how, but in some ways, although it made me unpalatable in some ways, or my information was like less accepted in some people's ears, it did protect me in some ways. I don't know. It's a little bit hard to say because some people have told me like, Aurora, I saw flying rainbow lasagna come up in the suggested videos for like 5 years before I finally clicked on your video because I always thought it wasn't serious and that it wasn't formal and it wasn't disciplined. And why? But I wanted to look at something called flying rainbow lasagna and I didn't know how deep and profound it was. And I'm never insulted when people tell me that. And I was like, what? You know, I'm like laughing. I'm like, that's so funny. I'm glad you finally clicked on those videos and found my work. So there might be something there in making it appear ridiculous, but it wasn't my intention to make it appear ridiculous to kind of prevent it from being censored because I had no idea of what is ridiculous in your world. Like I literally, when I created that sculpture name and said that and brought it forward, I had no idea how it would be received by the cultural conventions of your time and place. And I'm glad that I didn't know, like it was just made from a very artistically pure place. And then let the chips fall where they may. And Michelangelo says, thank you, Master Aurora. I've been watching your videos for years and can totally appreciate your tasteful delivery of the flying rainbow lasagna and its complexity. Thank you for being a long-term lasagna listener and for your own practice. Michelangelo says, delivered to us all as a gift, really. P.S. Still just FRL Merkaba in my mind. At times, I feel the electric chair I'm sitting in could be FRLing with my own DNA dance. So, you know, Michelangelo, I recognize that you have your own mobility and ability limitations, but I would like for you to know that there is something incredibly valuable and unique in your particular life trajectory, and that keep on adding more layers to the masterpiece of your existence, because I'm very certain that there is a beautiful meaning and some, like, your story is not like anybody else's story. Your life journey is not like anybody else's journey. You have a particularly unique and profound, aspect of your life. Keep going. I think that we're all very excited to see what your masterpiece is going to turn out to be like. Joyce says, I appreciate you, Professor. Thank you, Joyce. I appreciate you. You're an excellent student. And she says, you are a wonderful human being, and I'm grateful for you. Love to you and Cheeky too. Thank you so much. I love the community support. I would just like you to know. So although I've spoken here today about how just doing lasagna is an innate part of who I am, and that I certainly would do it whether or not I had recognition or support. It feels wonderful to have support. It's like if you ever see one of these people that's like a long distance runner and they're always out, running on the bike trail or something like that. And you see them like clockwork every day. They're out there. They're out there no matter what. It's part of who they are. But when you give a little hunk or you clap or you say good job, looking good, it gives them a little lift to keep going. And I feel very much like that. When you guys give me a little shout out, a little drive by, community support, it makes my back goes up, my spine goes up. I'm like, keep going, lasagna. I really, really do appreciate it. And I will tell you that I will never stop lasagna. I will never stop lasagna. There were many evil things in this world, evil agendas and evil regimes that have tried to stop the lasagna, and they couldn't stop the lasagna. And then they tried to just bully me and get me to voluntarily stop lasagna. You better stop the lasagna. And I'd be like, yeah, still get the lasagna. So I can very truthfully tell you guys, I will never stop lasagna. I will keep going no matter what. And the painting keeps on getting more beautiful, painting of reality for all of us. So thank you very much for all of that beautiful love. I'll take it. And this is a beautiful comment. Oh my goodness, Kim Rose, thank you. She says, you are a treasure. Much love and appreciation. Thank you very much. And it makes me feel very, very joyful to be here. When I was first here as Aurora, I did not connect with the very best people in the world. It took me a long time to find how to articulate what I have to share, and then to navigate human society and to find people like you. I feel really, really, truly grateful. When I started my class in 2013, I started to gather together around what I really think are the best people in the world. So thank you, guys. Thank you for being who you are, and for being a part of my class, and for being excellent students, and for making yourselves available to the dance. Thank you to the people who dance with me, and thank you to the people who are in the mental stage of just being able to comprehend the lasagna. Even if you are some people in this dance who think about the dance or watch the dance or consider it, you don't do it yet yourself, thank you. Thank you for being if this were a symphony, you might not be playing an instrument, but you might be in the audience appreciating the music. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being at that level of reality. And that is also worthy of celebration. And then also from listening to music for many years and saturating yourself with it, and it flows over you and it flows through you, at a certain point, then you might feel motivated that you want to start doing the lasagna too. Pedro says, got to go back to work. Love the lasagna. Pedro, thank you so much for taking time away from your work to be able to be a part of our class. And Mary Ellen says, thank you. And Joyce says, is the lasagna curl a waveform? And I would say yes. So the curly edge of the lasagna, this sculpture might not be perfect, but there's an up and down. And that is literally what humans call a sine wave. If you took a circle, cut it in half, and scooted one part to the side like that, that is a sine wave. That is the essence of what a flying rainbow lasagna is. It is a waveform in the sense that you have a stabilized, like the original shape is this figure 8 vortex-based waveform where it is a standing wave because you have balanced energies. So this keeps on going for forever because you have like 10 units of energy comes from inside to outside, and then 10 units of energy goes from the outside to the inside. So you have balance. Like in your bank account, I earned $10 today, and then I spent $10 on my sandwich. And then tomorrow I will do the same thing. Like this is how you stay alive. So the flying rainbow lasagna is very similarly a standing wave that is symmetrical and balanced. And this is part of how it continues to have existence in reality, like the perfectly calibrated parallel mirrors where you have one beam of light that is constantly bouncing between the two beams of mirrors, two end points of mirrors, standing wave or a limitation, the infinite amount of journeying that can take place within the boundaries of a limited system. Mary Ellen says, oh, what is the alleged atlas coming towards Earth and the original soul you walked into? Oh, okay. So back to your question, Mary Ellen, about the original soul that I walked into. Photosynthesis. How does this happen if one person leaves Earth? Why would it collapse? Oh, so the stuff that was happening with the death of the original person here. If you consider the timelines of reality to be like the thread of a tapestry, or like the thread of a woolen garment, like a sweater or something like that. Some of the fibers go like this, and some of the fibers go like this. And then you have a structural integrity from these fibers weaving together. In time, the fibers are causality events. If you cut the threads in a sweater, if you cut enough of them, the entire thing starts to degrade and pull apart. You know, like the hole gets bigger. Or like in stockings, like the run starts out small, but it runs up the whole entire length of the stockings. Because you have to have causality structures that fit together. This thing happened over here because it's connected to this thing, and this thing over here. And people's lives are connected. The life that I am living or that I've taken on as my own life was connected to many other lives. And if you cut that thread and ended this life in the time tapestry, there would be all of these other things that never happened as a result in the future. And a lot of those things were important things. And that's part of why the life that I'm in was not only being cut short and destroyed, but erased from existence. And that erased from existence is even worse than cut short prematurely. That is illegal Antichrist time technology. And when I saw that going on, I'm like, you can't kill that life. And also you can't just erase from existence. That will destroy the fabric of space-time. And that's why I gave myself the go-ahead to come in here and keep this life alive. And in order to keep this life alive, I had to do miracles, because this body would not be alive if I was not here making it be alive. Believe me on that. So that is a lot of why I invented flying rainbow lasagna. I transformed the cellular nature, the genetic nature, but also the relationship of this body to time in order to still be here. But the key point is I didn't go against or break any cosmic laws. So that makes me an impossibility when I'm a sanctioned impossibility. And a lot, like, let's say, like, I perturbed a lot of people by doing this. And they're all like, that's not fair, she cheated. And I'm like, I did not cheat. Here's the map. And they had to all agree. And that's why I'm still here. Because I did not cheat. I followed the rules. And then I actually wrote an additional rule on top of all the rules that allows flying rainbow lasagna to happen. And that means that we did not have the degradation of the fabric of space-time. And I got to be here and share flying rainbow lasagna with you directly. And many other positive potentials exist as a result of that. So the other question Mary Ellen asks about is Atlas coming towards Earth. So as I've also told you today, we need to deploy the utmost skepticism with the scientific community that tells us that certain things are perceived in DNA. DNA does exist, but we cannot believe things that say, I have a machine that sequenced DNA and he gave me the sequence, or I have a machine that got blood at this crime scene and I am able to compare it to this person and I know that this is the blood of this person because of DNA fragments. Can't believe in any of that stuff. And you can't believe in any of the stuff that says we've sequenced your tumor and so we're able to tell what is the genetic quotient of your tumor, or that we've sequenced your genetic code and it means that you have the potential for growing this tumor. Can't believe in any of that stuff. And you cannot believe in this particular type of test that was used to justify the events of 5 years ago that were very corrosive, antisocial events that were about anti-freedom and total destruction. We're going to end soon because I can tell Chiki really needs her food and her medicine. But the perception of what's happening in space is something that you should be similarly skeptical about. Like, so scientists will say, like, we can see what's going on with DNA or with the virus, but they can't. They can't actually see that stuff. They're making up a lot of stories as a result. And you don't have your own microscope and you don't really speak their language and you're not a scientist or priest indoctrinated into their cults. So you don't know how to assess what they're telling you. They're telling you other things about what's happening in the sky, but you can't trust any of it. And I don't trust any of it. And I used to just only trust my optical eyes and my inner eye. But even now, it's difficult to trust my own perception because there's a lot of things that are obscured and blocked out that we're not seeing that are actually there. And then there are also illusions that are portrayed that do not actually exist, but we are seeing as if they are there. So to answer your question about the alleged interstellar space object known as Atlas, I don't even know if that sucker exists. I can't take that as a foundation in my reality. I don't know if it exists. So I don't know. Is it a naturally occurring comet? Is it a clank metal spaceship disguised as a comet? Is it this? Is it that? Because you'll read an article that will say, like, it's been shown to emit blue light and this and that. And I'm like, how do I know that? How do I know it's emitting blue light? Can I see it? Can someone else see it? Is a stupid article saying it? Is Scientific American saying it? Like, I don't trust Scientific American because you know what? They told me a bunch of lies about like this stuff and a bunch of lies about this stuff, and they don't believe that this stuff exists. There's a lot of reasons why I have a lot of skepticism. So my real answer is I cannot speak to that because I don't know. I think that there's actually an enormous amount of activity that's going on in the sky and in the stars that we are not getting access to know about. That would be really important, really informative for you to know about. The control structure right now, like the governments and scientific structures, are not giving you empowerment information, and they are absolutely using psychological warfare to limit any information that you get and manipulate you through any information that you get. So with all of that, in recognition of all of that, like, you have to be super skeptical about anything. And so I don't have a better answer than that, other than like take it with an enormous amount of skepticism. Lisa says, thank you. So grateful. This is so uplifting. Good job. Glad to hear from you, Lisa. All my love to you and Cheeky. Want to dance again. Please dance. Thank you very much for dancing with us. Thank you for loving me and Cheeky. And I'm very, very glad to connect with you. One more comment. Congratulations. Joyce is doing great. She's still off the tobacco and not smoking cigarettes. Going to keep on encouraging you towards that, because that is a very positive lasagna timeline for you. And Mary Ellen says, that's why I ask you. Too hard to discern. Thanks for answering. Oh, yeah, definitely. And you know what, Mary Ellen? I would like to be able to tell you guys, like this does exist. This doesn't exist. This is real. This is that. This is that. The truth is, there are a lot of things that I can't see right now, although I do have excellent higher dimensional vision. The weather conditions right now are so bad. Like if we're on a highway and I have great vision, and you're asking me like, Aurora, like what's that sign say up ahead? And I'm going to tell you, I can't tell what the F that sign says because it's totally like fog and clouds. I can't see anything. I really can't see anything. So that's how bad it is right now. The different frequencies, particulates, and other consciousness reduction hardware and software in this world are making it incredibly difficult for me as a seasoned expert to be able to see and know what's going on in space and higher dimensional realities. So just please keep that in mind. And I wish that I had better information to give to you, but I don't. Like, all I can tell you is like, I can't see anything. Suzuka says, doesn't it scare you that you can't see? It doesn't scare me. I feel incredibly distressed and inflamed, enraged at times. I know how much this is not the way that things are supposed to be. I know exactly how unjust this situation is. I know exactly the things that are wrong in this situation. I'm like, I mean, if I gave you the totality of what I know, you would be very depressed because you'd be like your shoulders go down. You'd be like, Aurora, like you just told me like 25 things are going wrong that are never supposed to go wrong. I'm like, I know. So yeah, here's a long list of the 25 things that are going wrong that should never go wrong. It's like, imagine that I am whatever, your mechanic on your car, and you bring it in and you're like, my car's making some weird noises. And I'm like, yeah, list of 25 things that are failing in your car. And you're lucky that you made it down the road to even get to the service station over here. Like, it's bad. So scare is not even the word. I am shocked, appalled. I clutch my pearls. I'm enraged. I'm distressed. I'm inflamed. I'm allergic. And with all of that, what do? I dance like a flying rainbow lasagna because I am in charge of flying rainbow lasagna. This is something that I can use to actively respond to the 25 things that should never fail on your car, but that are failing in this moment. And your car is the car of reality. So when I do my dance, I don't just dance for myself, I dance for the entirety of time. And when I see that there are a bunch of really screwed up things that are happening on your planet, in the scientific community, in the medical community, that are not okay, that are going to cause like the extinction of your species, what I do is dance. And I would like to encourage each of you to do the same thing. Because when you dance, you write a new narrative for what can happen in reality. It is the greatest superpower. The strongest superhero is not like the Hulk who can smash through a wall or whatever, the flame guy who can burn things. It's the guy who can control time. It's the person who can perceive the future potentials of time and change the moment now so that you change the future. That is what you can do with flying rainbow lasagna. And one more brief anecdote, then we have to finish, give Cheeky her food. And also, I think we're about to get a thunderstorm. That's why the lighting conditions look so weird outside. But, and I hope I'm not going to forget what I was about to say. Sorry, because my brain is so tired. Things that you should do. Oh, it's terrible, 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 terrible. That's how I can tell that it's definitely an important thing that I have to bring it back in order to be able to say it. Terrible, because I was going to end on a very good positive note. Well, it has to do with, of course, flying rainbow lasagna and creating a more positive reality structure. But you're not required. So the offshoot of all of this, to say it in a better way, is that you were at one point indoctrinated into the inevitability of death and other diseases and limitations that created negative habitual DNA dances in your body. But now, with flying rainbow lasagna, you have the capacity to consciously override, erase, and create a new, totally upgraded and positive flying rainbow lasagna potentials and behaviors in your body. And I think that is the best news ever. And it is also the best approach, because you don't even have to know like everything that is going wrong in reality. You can just speak in positives. Like you don't have to examine all of the ways in which there are diseases and pathogens around you. You can just envision and paint the sketches of the reality you would like to be a part of. That's really important. So, you know, we do some work with like turning down the volume on stuff that's evil and pathogenic, but I don't want you to be too focused on the negative and the confrontation against evil. And I would like for you to be focused on the positive, the generative, and the engagement with that which is good and divine, because that's a lot of what flying rainbow lasagna is. So it's not just for shoveling garbage. And although you guys are in severe distress, and the flying rainbow lasagna is being used as kind of like when people fall down, you know, they're like mountaineers, and they slide down the ice, and then they're like in a crevasse and they're barely hanging on, and they kind of like, you know, use their ice axe and like pull themselves up out of the crevasse and kind of get to safety. The lasagna is like your ice axe, you know, like you're like, oh, sorry, hold on one moment. One moment. The lasagna is like a tool that you can use to leverage yourself out of severe distress. And I'm glad that you can use it for that, but it is so much more than that. It's like you literally, like, this is a beautiful, finely calibrated paintbrush, but you have fallen into a crevasse. So you're kind of like, you know, pulling yourself up by your paintbrush. But really, this is a very cultured, elevated, and advanced tool for you to use. This is not just a scrub brush for you to clean the toilet. This is not just a shovel for you to shovel garbage out of your way. We're doing that right now, but please know this is so much more exalted, so much more fun, so much more exuberant, so much more free. Try to keep in mind, use it for really cool, fun, expansive, elevated stuff. All right, not just for chorefulness. Okay, so definitely, Cheeky needs her food. We all need rest. Good job. I love all of you as students. Thank you very much, Suzuka. Thank you for your beautiful questions. Thank you for being open to everything that I have to share. And yes, people have sent me some beautiful requests to be part of the Tuesday group. I will gladly add you to the Tuesday group. Cool people only. All right. Okay. So beautiful. And reminder, if you're not already signed up, please sign up for the upcoming Flying Rainbow Lasagna retreat in Sedona, New Year's Eve. I love dancing with you guys in person. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful night, everyone.